It's time for another God of High School video, guys, and this time we're going to give you the second part in God of High School's Ragnarok Mega Arc. Specifically, we'll be covering the 233rd until the 268th episode of this amazing manhwa. And if you haven't checked it out already, we highly recommend that you watch our previous God of High School video covering the first part of the Ragnarok storyline. With that out of the way, let's kick the doors into this high-octane arc, as only God of High School can deliver. Ragnarok comes ever closer. When we last visited the world of God of High School, we found out that the king of Knox, Okwang, had asked someone deep within his chambers how they were feeling about becoming the so-called new god of fight. Well guys, we immediately get our payoff here, as we find out that the king is talking to none other than Taejin, the legendary South Korean warrior and Jin Mori's grandpa. He's still in chains after the previous events that happened in the series. As for the king, well, he seems pleased with himself about the proposal. In reply to the old man, Taejin raises one of his legs and gives the king an offensive gesture with his toes. He then apologizes to him for being rude, but it's just a bluff, as Taejin raises his other leg and doubles down on pretty much cursing out the evil cult leader. We then see Sang Mandok, one of the king's closest underlings, kneeling in front of the cult leader and reporting that the stones they've scattered have gathered around 90% energy at this point. Mandok apologizes for the delay and appears repentant right in front of the king, an act that Taejin notices and seems to be the only one who can see through Mandok's ulterior motives. Still, the king tells Mandok that it's all good. We then find out that the true purpose of the stones is to gather energy for Knox so that they could perform a ritual called the deification, the same spell they need in order to properly transform Taejin into the new god of fight. The old man leaves the chamber after telling Mandok that he's leaving the rest to him. With Okwang gone, Mandok commands his men to keep 90% of the stone's energy charged and tuck away the rest of it in another ESS, Energy Storage System. At this point, Taejin can't hold it in anymore, so he belts out a laugh and pretty much mocks Mandok for being a backstabbing weasel who's been trying to betray the king in secret. That's not all though, as Taejin also tells Mandok that he's not going to win the next time they fight. The legendary Taekwondo master also threatens the Knox cultist by saying that he's just been waiting patiently all this time to put hands on Mandok and get the revenge the white-haired Knox poster boy deserves. Mandok tries his best to ignore Taejin's remarks before brushing it off and going back to the God of High School World Tournament's final match. Meanwhile, the announcer declares the beginning of the finals with the usual hype and fanfare, telling everyone that everyone is paying attention to what will happen in this match. At the same time, the Pope asks one of his attendants about their crusaders, John, Maria, and Paul. The attendant tells him that they're already with Mujin Park at the moment, and we find out that Paul has handed over the Vatican's national treasure, the Holy Grail, to Mujin. Mujin is in awe when he sees the artifact right in front of him. After all, the Holy Grail is what he considers the most precious rare item that seals a god's power. But there are limits to what it can do. As Paul puts it, they only have 2 chances to use the Holy Grail before it loses all of its power. So Paul warns Mujin to use the national treasure wisely, to which he replies that he knows exactly when to unleash the Grail's power. And with that, Mujin rejoices at the fact that the last piece of the puzzle is almost complete, something which makes Paul wonder if Mujin is really the right guy to hand over the Holy Grail to. Mujin then asks P if their other allies are at the agreed location. She informs him that they'll be arriving there soon. Somewhere else, Kim Dusik asks his assistant how much Mujin still owes their loaning firm. We find out that Mujin has been missing his payments for 3 months now, and his debt has ballooned to 1.2 billion won. Hearing this, Kim decides to pay Mujin a visit. That is to say, he's coming to collect the money he's owed. Kim tells his men to suit up and come with him once they're ready, and we find out that Kim has decked himself out in expensive armor. Back at the arena, the announcer introduces Team Korea. Mira, Daewi, and Huey walk to the ring. We find out that the crowd has started to come around and cheer for Team Korea, with each of its members having their own fan club within the stadium. The announcer then welcomes the other finalists, Team France. It's made up of Eliza, Guide, and their leader Andre. Just like with Team Korea, the stadium erupts with cheers as fans express their admiration for the French fighters. With both teams now in the ring, the announcer formally announces the beginning of their match by having them bow to each other. Somewhere else, everyone's favorite revolutionary, Gyeom-ji, bids farewell to his dad and supervisor at their convenience store. He promises that he'll get a grip once he's done with this adventure, as Gyeom-ji makes his way to the location of their planned attack against Knox. In another part of the city, Pom-gwang puts the finishing touches to the orphanage that he recently helped construct. Gamdo thanks him for all the hard work, as we get a glimpse of the new and improved Jang-mi when she approaches her companions. Jang-mi then tells them that it's time to head over to the assembly place. Inside the God of High School World Tournament arena, everyone from Team Japan to Team USA have their eyes glued to the center of the ring, as the announcer starts the fight between Team Korea and Team France. And for the first round, Daewi is going up against Andre. Daewi doesn't waste any time either, as he decides to go all in right from the start of their fight. He activates Kyokushin Karate, the wave of the Blue Dragon, in hopes of rushing Andre. On the other hand, the captain of Team France has summoned his national treasure, The rapier of Jean d'Arc. Daewi lunges at Andre with the wave of the blue dragon, while the Frenchman uses a technique called 72 lances de combat, 72 lances to meet his opponent. They clash, while in a hospital room somewhere, Beck finally wakes up after recovering from his injuries. The announcer notes that Andre's moves resemble Beck's when he participated in the previous God of High School tournament. We then get a flashback courtesy of Beck when he remembers how he watched Andre compete in France's fencing championship, a competition that Andre swept. From there, we learn that Beck had actually studied Andre years ago and incorporated his fighting style into his own. In the present, we witness Daewi and Andre's clash, as Team Korea's captain uses the wave of the blue dragon to disintegrate the 72 lances Andre had launched at him. Daewi successfully defends against these, but Andre immediately follows it up with a turning Pasado Soto to straight up stab Daewi in the gut. However, the Kyokushin karate practitioner manages to beat his opponent to the punch by countering with a solid body shot that connects to Andre's midsection clean. It's enough to ruin the turning Pasado Soto's trajectory and just slice Daewi's shoulder, as the two combatants recoil from each other's hit. But Andre's not done yet. He immediately recovers his footing and attempts to stab Daewi in his one good eye. Daewi blocks his rapier, but it ends up stabbing him right in the wrist. His reaction time to the Frenchman's attack is so quick that even Andre is surprised to find out Daewi was able to defend himself against it. And well, we soon discover that Andre is kind of a racist when he alludes to Beck, calling the guy a monkey from East Asia who's been trying to mimic his skills. Andre then ups the pressure by doubling his lance output with 147 lances de combat, 144 lances. Daewi braces for impact when he sees this. Andre prepares to barrage Daewi with it, as he gets a flashback of his own. We find out about the man's origins, where it turns out that Andre had a lover named Zuri. At the time, everything seemed to be going well for Andre. He was a fencing champ and a hot fiancé after all. But then, things took a dark turn when Andre came home one night to witness that Zuri had killed another man. She told Andre that the guy she took out tried to force himself on her. So when the cops came sniffing, Andre took the blame for Zuri and got sentenced to 15 years in prison. Andre would kick butt in jail too, but his habit of getting into fights with the other inmates just extended his sentence by another 5 years. And if that wasn't bad enough, Zuri straight up left him for another man. Oh, and here's the absolute kick to the groin too. Andre found out that Zuri was an absolute psychopath as well. Remember the guy she killed? Yeah, that dude didn't try to force himself on Zuri. She just didn't like how the guy presented himself. So she stabbed him. Andre eventually found himself approached by a man who told him that he would be cleared of all his crimes if he participated and won the upcoming God of High School World Tournament. Andre agreed to this deal, and we also find out that his teammates Eliza and Guide were also a couple of other inmates in the prison who became friends with Andre. Now, you'd think that Andre agreed to join the World Tournament so that he could have his revenge against Zuri at the least. But no, guys. It turns out that Andre is also kind of a hopeless romantic, as we discover that his main goal in clearing his name is to get back with Zuri. In the present, we find out that Daewi has successfully survived Andre's 144 lances, but the leader of Team France makes sure that Daewi is unable to defend against him by summoning his borrowed power, Jean d'Arc, before summoning a gigantic weapon called the Lance of Ages. He then augments the Lance of Ages by making it spin and turning it into a huge drill aimed at Daewi. Not only that, but a technique called Jean d'Arc version 2 Witch Hunt sets the gigantic weapon on fire before Andre launches it at his opponent to make sure Daewi gets absolutely wrecked. Daewi braces for another assault, and when the flaming giant lance reaches him, he goes for the Fist of the Black Turtle to punch the weapon right at its tip and cause it to disintegrate. Somewhere else, Beck thinks to himself and remembers what he learned after studying Andre, that the man always finishes with a move called Low Quart, basics, to defeat his opponents. Beck's statement is confirmed when Andre does exactly that. We find out that he immediately followed up his gigantic lance with the Low Quart, allowing him to level change and pierce Daewi right in the heart with his rapier. To make sure his opponent doesn't get up, Andre activates a technique called Blossom, Crimson Flower, before pulling out his blade from Daewi's chest. A flower appears right behind Daewi and he gets taken out as soon as Andre removes his blade from him. Daewi's HP instantly goes down to 0, which forces the tournament's emergency response team to rush to the middle of the ring and deliver first aid. The announcer even declares that the match between the two finalists will be halted for the time being. Meanwhile, Kyoichi asks Midori if this is where Daewi dies as per the vision she saw. However, Midori tells her teammate that Daewi's still alive. That's because we get another big reveal showing that the real members of Team Korea are not even at the stadium. They're currently with Mujin and Judge P. As for who's competing in the finals, well, it turns out that P has created marionettes of Huey, Daewi, and Mira to act as decoys while their real counterparts proceed with the war against Knox. Mujin tells P that her mission with the marionettes is to distract Knox long enough for them to get in position for the upcoming battle against the cult. He then tells everyone that it's time to spring their plan as he leads his resistance group out of their base. Back inside the stadium's control center's inner console, Mandok oversees the Energy Stone operation. However, he has something else on his mind right now. You see, Mandok knows that Mujin is going to attack them any time now. So he watches his screens closely and tries to think of where his enemy might appear. Somewhere else, the Knox followers tasked with guarding the Knox Energy Stone and Bundang are slacking off when the pair of greasy old men approach them. One of the followers tells the intruders that the place is a restricted area, but the old man says that they're just there to take a nap. The followers then try their best to turn away the two old guys, but they're suddenly knocked out when one of them pulls out a wooden staff and whacks them with it. We then find out that these are agents of the National Labor Union, and the man wielding the staff is young Donpo's station manager credit delinquent Mr. G. Mandok instantly gets word of the ambush in Bundang. Not only that, but he also discovers that all the other sites where they're keeping the energy stones are currently under attack. The followers panically tell him that it's going to take a mere 3 hours before they lose all their remaining bases. So in response to that, Mandok declares an emergency level 1 and orders his men to activate the energy stone backup sequence. All the while, he continues to analyze the situation and notices that the Team Korea in this stadium aren't the real ones. So he wonders where they are right now. In the middle of the ring, the tournament's medical team continues to revive Daewi, not knowing that it's just a marionette. From her room, Judge P controls the Daewi puppet and makes it wake up. Andre's relieved that he didn't end up killing his opponent, as he faces up against Mira for the second round of their match. Somewhere else, Team Vatican and the rest of their allies from the Holy City march toward one of the stadium's gates. Paul says a prayer, which activates a spell that causes an explosion right in front of Gate 8 of the God of High School Tournament arena. The rest of Knox's followers attempt to mobilize at Gate 8, but they soon find out that all the other entrances to the stadium are currently under siege. Everyone panics except for Mandok, because right now he's deep within his thoughts trying to figure out what Mujin is going to do next. Back in the ring, Judge P sticks to their original plan and makes her Mira marionette dodge and weave through Andre's rapier strikes. While this is happening, Mandok finally realizes what Mujin is trying to do with this coordinated ambush. Still, it's too late to do anything because Mujin and his group crash into one of the stadium's halls to push through with their plan. We also find out that they're each wearing huge mascot helmets on their heads. In fact, it's revealed that these same mascot heads were the ones Mujin presented to the group earlier. Mujin's group then reach a fork in the road when they encounter a couple of passages within Knox's base. So he tells everyone that they're going to split into 2 teams before telling them to collect the uniforms of the Knox worshippers they've taken down along the way. After that, Mujin gives Judge P a call to ask her about the status of the rest of their resistance group. P informs Mujin that Team Vatican has successfully breached Gate 8 of the stadium. Meanwhile, Teenager Team, a group made up of Pum Wang, Jang Mi, and Gyum Ji, have taken over Knox Sector 34. Finally, Judge P tells Mujin that their trap has been set. Mujin is pleased to hear all of this. He then ends the call with Judge P and proceeds with splitting his group to cover more ground in the mission. However, a large group of Knox priests suddenly appears from the shadows, and they're not alone either. Because just as soon as the priests reveal themselves, Mandok walks in and starts gloating about how Mujin couldn't take on all of them. He even further gets on Mujin's nerves when he starts calling the man by his old name, Mubong. Mandok then instructs his priests to look after their injured cult members as he walks up to his enemy. He then starts mocking Mujin for being so predictable, while the rest of the Knox priests continue to haul their unconscious comrades out of there. And by the time Mandok is done berating Mujin, he charges up an attack and prepares to strike down his sworn rival. In the middle of the arena, Judge P goes on the offensive and manages to land a counterattack against Andre using her Mira marionette. At the same time, deep within Knox's base, Mandok is shocked to discover that the Mujin that was in front of him and the rest of his companions were just more puppets under Judge P's control. Mandok is too late to realize that he's been duped, because the real Mujin and his companions are currently with some of the priests, the same ones he ordered to look after the wounded Knox members. We then get the payoff from when Mujin ordered everyone to steal the uniforms of the cultists they took down earlier, as it's revealed that Mujin and his crew disguise themselves to trick the other Knox members into thinking that they're just a bunch of injured worshippers. So Mujin springs his plan and they take down the priests while in the middle of one of the tunnels inside Knox's base. And as for the trap that Judge P mentioned earlier, yeah guys, Mandok is about to discover it firsthand. You see, Judge P loaded up her marionettes with explosives, which she then promptly sets off when she senses that Mandok has taken down the Mujin puppet. A short distance away, Mujin and the rest of his team take off their Knox disguises and get back to business. He even boomerangs Mandok's insult back at him, telling the Knox bishop that he was the one who's predictable. A flashback then reveals that the 2 passageways they encountered earlier prove vital to their plans. One of them leads to the central control room, while the others headed straight for the king's chambers. He then tasked Team A, made up of Daewi, Mira, and a few other judges, with taking the passage to the central control room to seize the entire stadium. On the other hand, Team B, which is made up of Mujin, Huey, Yeongdang, Onyo, and Hanryang, would go to the king's chambers to retrieve the cane of the sage. From there, they could summon the real Jin Mori to fight with them and put an end to Knox once and for all. Before proceeding, Onyo reminded Team A that it's of the utmost importance that they take over the central control room, since it's the only way they could enter the king's chambers. Most importantly, Onyo told Huey to conserve his energy and only use it when he's about to fight the king. In the present, Mandok is unharmed by the explosion from Judge P's puppet trap. He stays cool in front of the other priests, but Mandok finally loses it when he steps on another trap that Mujin had left for him. Again, Mandok uses his powers to protect his group from the bomb. After that, he tells his men to split into two groups, one meant to chase after the intruders headed for the control room, and the other to come with him and chase after Mujin. The Knox Bishop then tells his team that he'll be going in first, and we get to see just how angry Mandok is when he literally leaps toward Mujin screaming the man's name. Meanwhile, Mujin waits for Mandok's eventual arrival. He tells the Knox Bishop to shut his mouth, as the two powerful warriors clash with each other. We then get another flashback that shows us just how deep this rivalry between Mujin and Mandok goes. In a scene from 17 years ago, we find Mujin skipping stones in front of a lake a week after the Six's battle with Jin Taejin. Mujin is having doubts about his power, especially after realizing just how powerful Taejin was during their bout. In fact, Mujin is so down in the dumps that he even starts questioning Unnyo's prophecy about him, about how he'll become a king that would reform the entire world. His pity party is interrupted when he hears the voice of a young Mandok pretty much telling him that Mujin's recent failure against Taejin is just part of his journey to greatness. And oh man, we also discover that Mandok used to suffer from Lou Gehrig's disease. Mandok then introduces himself as a big fan of Mujin, and when Mujin thinks back on this particular event, he can't help but admit that Mandok seemed like an okay dude back when they first met. In the present, Mujin and Mandok have their hands locked into each other, as the two combatants try to overpower each other. Not only that, but these two are absolutely cooking each other with some good old-fashioned trash talk. The Knox Bishop then tries to get the upper hand by using a technique called God's Blades on Mujin. This allows him to remotely stab his opponent with a few blades. However, Mujin counters it by using an ability called Longinus's Hand to try and crush Mandok. Neither of them gives in until the impact of their respective techniques forces them to back away from each other. Mandok instantly follows it up by summoning a number of swords aimed at Mujin, but he takes the blades down with a twirl of his finger. Still, Mandok continues his assault. This time he goes for Knox Arc Gospel Chapter 17, God's Iron Mace, to summon a huge sword, which he then launches at Mujin. Seeing this, Mujin uses Longinus's Hand again to pin down the giant sword with a few stalactites he forged using the passageway ceiling. Mandok mocks Mujin for relying on his gravitational powers, telling his opponent that he knows its weakness. He then uses Knox Arc Gospel Chapter 18, God's Counsel, to summon a literal wave made up of swords and hurl it at Mujin. In response to this, Mujin pulls out a few more stalactites to block the sword wave coming for him. It manages to destroy several of the swords, but a few get past through Mujin's defenses and shoot straight for him. Mandok thinks he's won, but seeing the blades right in front of him just makes Mujin all the more hyped. So he ends up punching the remaining swords from Mandok's technique out of the way until every single one of them falls to the ground. With Mandok's technique fully countered, Mujin starts to gloat and tell his rival that he's an absolute problem. After all, not only is Mujin a borrowed power user, but he's also a legit martial artist. In a hilarious twist though, we find that Mujin didn't exactly dodge all of Mandok's blades. A couple of them are still stuck on his back, but the man knows how to hide it from his opponent. In a flashback to just before Mujin's team split up, near the entrance to the passage that leads to the king's chamber, Han Riang checks on the tunnel's wall. He correctly surmises that it's 10 meters thick, so he pulls out one of his national treasures, Blue Cloud's sword, to slice a hole in the wall connecting to the other passageway. He then tells the rest of Team B to come with him, while Judge Q asks why they couldn't just use Huey's Yoi to break through the king's chamber. Huey tells him that it won't work, since the chamber is made up of a super strong material called barbadium. Huey, Mira, and Daewi huddle for one last time and wish one another good luck on their mission. Shortly after, Unnyo and Hyungdan notice that the fox speed they've been carrying has activated. They hear Jin Mori's voice from the other end, which makes Mira and Daewi rush to the fox speed to tell their friend that they're coming to save him. But the call is cut short when the fox speed signal appears to fizzle out. So they decide to get back to the mission, but not before Mira and Daewi tell Huey to run away if he feels that he's in danger. Huey hears this and basically promises his friends that he will. In the present, Team A is almost at the central control room's bridge. Mira and Daewi notice that the judges are more than enough to handle the minor obstacles that came their way up to this point. However, they soon find out that a big challenge is right in front of them when Judge S tells everyone to stop in their tracks. Judge S senses a powerful presence coming from the shadows, and he's barely able to defend himself with his national treasure, Bao Meng, when it strikes. Moments later, Team A comes face to face with one of Knox's top dogs, Bishop Romario. Back at Mujin and Mandok's bout, the two rivals find themselves locked with each other again. They continue throwing more shade at each other, with Mandok revealing that a bunch of Knox priests are coming to back him up. Unknown to Mandok, both Mujin and Han Riang had planned for this. We see the backup Knox priests rushing towards Mandok's location, but are taken by surprise when Han Riang suddenly appears behind them. One of the priests panics and asks how Han Riang was able to get behind them, considering that he was ahead this whole time. We then get the reveal that Han Riang used the hole he made in the wall earlier to double back and ambush the priests. And with Mandok's supposed backup completely taken out, Han Riang rushes to Mujin's aid. Meanwhile, Team A gets the chills the moment they lay eyes on Bishop Romario. Mira even likens his presence to Mandok. Still, Judge B doesn't back down and prepares to attack the bishop. However, Romario takes him out with a wave of his finger. Mira and Daewi are shocked to witness Judge B get hit like that, but it's immediately revealed that he was able to evade Romario's attack with the help of Judge C. Judges B and C appear right behind Romario, as B summons his borrowed power, the Phoenix, to attack the Knox bishop. But Romario takes out the Phoenix with a single punch, knocking out Judge B along with it. Judge C tries to take advantage of the opening, but Romario teleports behind him and tries to take down the judge with a single punch. Judge C would have gotten blasted too if not for Judge S's arrival. S jumps between them in the nick of time to block Romario's punch with Balmung. We find out that Judge S has managed to heal Judge B with his powers, as he tells his ally to attack Romario this instant. Judge B jumps right behind Romario and slashes him with his national treasure, but the Knox bishop recovers and tries for a counter punch. At that instant, Judge Q leaps into action to kick away Romario's hand and protect Judge B. All the judges prepare to overwhelm Romario with their respective techniques and weapons, but the Knox bishop preempts this and slams each one of them into a wall before they could rush him. Romario then turns to Mira and Daewi as he prepares to take the two warriors out permanently, but Judge C manages to sneak up on the bishop and bind him with his shadow manipulation ability. Judge C then tells Mira and Daewi to waste no time and head straight for the king's chamber, in order that they obey the moment they hear it. Judge B desperately shouts for Mira and Daewi to keep running no matter what, but the two members of Team Korea are forced to stop in their tracks when they come across another Knox bishop, Sha Chen. Meanwhile, Knox priest Chang ambushes Judge O, while more Knox priests arrive to help Mandok in his battle against Mujin. Deep within the other passageway, the one leading to the king's chamber, Huey signals Hyangdan and Unnyo to halt their trek. He tells his companions that he feels a presence off in the distance, as a robed figure approaches them. Somewhere else, Hanriang is attacked by a Dante. Mujin starts to get worried when he sees this, knowing that a single Dante can go toe-to-toe with someone like Huey. But his worst fears come true and an entire gang of Dantes starts to arrive at their location. At the same time, Knox priests have also reached Mandok, which makes the Knox bishop think that he's finally gotten the better of his bitter rival. In a flashback from before the war, we finally discover what the king told the new batch of Dante clones he cooked up. It turns out that he came up with this sick contest where the top performer in their war against Mujin's resistance will have the right to claim the title of Dante. To make the deal sweeter, he even promised that this new Dante would also be given his third eye, aka the wisdom of the sage. As the king put it, this new Dante will become the next great Jade Emperor. We then get up to speed with what's happening with the original Jin Mori deep within the skyscraper inside the remnants of the Sage Realm. At this moment, the Monkey King is busy whacking an army of gigantic crabs, while his new friends, the group of creatures he dubbed the Raccoon family, cheer him on. In what is now known as the 7 Days of Fear, Mori continues to wreak havoc on the 6th floor of the building. He dispatches the giant crustaceans with ease. After that, he lands behind his little companion, Raccoon, who is currently holding a fox speed. As if on cue, Mori suddenly hears a couple of voices coming from the other end of the fox speed Raccoon has in his hands. The Monkey King immediately recognizes they belong to his best friends, Mira and Daewi. So Mori tries to reply by screaming his heart out right in front of the fox speed. But we finally find out the reason that their conversation was cut short earlier when we first witnessed this reunion between the three heroes. As it turns out, someone resembling Ilpio has snuck up on Mori to try and backstab him and destroy the fox speed. Mori senses this and elbows the Ilpio imposter, but he's able to palm the fox speed for a second and cause the thing to crack. And it's not like Mori has time to fix it either, as Raccoon warns the Monkey King about the imposter. Still, Mori ignores the fake Ilpio as he showboats in front of the Monkey King, and when Mori finally realizes that the fox speed is conked out on him, effectively ending his call with Daewi and Mira, our boy loses his patience. So he grabs the fake Ilpio by the neck and asks him where the real one is. The imposter tries to act tough and not give Mori anything, but Raccoon shouts at him from a short distance away, telling the Monkey King that he's found the real Ilpio. Mori sees this and realizes that the fox speed activated earlier because Ilpio was nearby. All of a sudden, the imposter transforms, all while giving us that classic line about how it's been a long time since he's shown his true form. Mori's opponent gradually takes the guise of a gigantic tiger man named Arpeggio. But all of Arpeggio's blustering comes to a halt when Mori doesn't even give him time to fully transform. The huge tiger man starts crying in pain and whining when Mori blasts a hole through his right shoulder, followed by the Mori's patented Hui Chuk high kick. Arpeggio barely recovers and completes his transformation a second later, and he tries to smash Mori with one of the stalagmites he grabbed from the battlefield. Arpeggio hurls the huge piece of rock right at Mori, who gets sent flying several meters back before fully stopping the stalagmite's momentum with his bare hands. However, Arpeggio is right in front of him the moment Mori recovers. This time, the Tiger Man is carrying an even larger stalagmite and is cocking back to slam it right on the Monkey King. Mori sees this and counters with a power stomp that forces his opponent to lose balance before going for another Hui Chuk kick right to Arpeggio's midsection. The Tiger Man flies through the air until a colossal hand that makes Arpeggio's already large frame look like an ant in comparison It turns out that this is none other than the true owner of the megastructure's 6th floor and Arpeggio's master, the creature known as Pralltriller. Mori is taken by surprise when he first sees Pralltriller, but the Monkey King proves he's leagues above these huge scrubs when he launches Yoi right at his face before Pralltriller could even make a move. Pralltriller just eats the Yoi strike at first, thinking it's nothing but a small prick on his cheek, but Mori makes the magical staff expand, which straight up blows off the 6th floor owner's head and executes him. And with that, Mori has just taken down another boss. Back in the human realm, Bishop Sha Chen continues to intimidate Daewi and Mira, even going so far as to tell them that they smell like a couple of filthy sewer dwellers. At that moment, Daewi feels Sha Chen's presence growing by the second, and he notices he can't move a muscle in front of the Knox Bishop. Sha Chen gloats about how she's got Daewi right in her hooks, attributing it to her good looks. Mira hears this and pretty much tells her she's dreaming, because she's an ugly old wrinkly hag. Hearing this makes Sha Chen furious, so the Knox Bishop cocks back her fist and tries to punch Mira. Nearby, Judge Q witnesses Sha Chen gearing up for the attack, so he and Judge C jump into action to rescue Mira and Daewi. Right on time too, as they find out that a single punch from Sha Chen is enough to blow a gaping hole within the passageway. Daewi asks Judge Q if it's because their opponent has used her borrowed power, but Q tells him that it was just an ordinary punch. In fact, this makes Q wonder if his rival, former judge and current Knox Bishop R, is as strong as Sha Chen. His thoughts are interrupted when Sha Chen seemingly teleports right in front of Judge Q to go for another powerful punch, but he dodges it in the blink of an eye in order to get behind the bishop and trap her with his Joker sickle. Sha Chen catches one of the playing cards floating around Judge Q and mistakes it for a love letter. Q brushes off the comment and attempts to slice the Knox Bishop's neck, but Sha Chen blocks the sickle with her finger, which makes her think she has the upper hand. However, it turns out that Judge Q has gone for a feint with a technique called Joker's Prank, which summons the Joker right behind Sha Chen to take off her head. It would have worked too, if not for Romario seeing this sequence go down a short distance away. Seeing that the Joker is about to slice Sha Chen's neck open, Romario launches an energy blast toward them. This forces Q to leap out of the way, while the Joker disintegrates after taking the blast, effectively saving Sha Chen from getting taken out. At that moment, Judge S emerges and chastises his team for going off solo. Q and C ignore Judge S, who barely dodges another one of Romario's energy shots when C pulls him away from where he's standing. Judge C then goes for Romario at full tilt, hitting the Knox Bishop with a couple of strikes before Romario manages to land a body shot on him. C thinks on his feet and immediately uses his replacement technique the moment he's struck. Nearby, Judge B uses a technique called Feathers of the Phoenix and turns a Knox priest named Alfonso into a pincushion. The other Knox priests cry out for their teammate, but it's too late. Judge B reveals that the Feathers of the Phoenix aren't ordinary projectiles. Anyone the feathers hit becomes the Phoenix host and turns their energy into a copy of itself that's controlled by B. With that, the judge challenges all the other priests to come at him. Meanwhile, Judge Q hurls a sickle at Sha Chen while she's busy admiring herself with her smartphone. Sha Chen catches a sickle with her bare hand, but Q tries to follow it up with a slice from one of his playing cards. Sha Chen blocks the card with her other hand, which then gives another Knox priest named Nibelungen an opening to backstab Q. This gambit does not work though, because Nibelungen is instantly taken out when Q summons the Joker to deal with this interloper. All the while, Judge C tries to attack Sha Chen from behind. She ducks away from C's blades, but the opening allows Q to go for a swing of his sickle. Sha Chen barely dodges it, as she and Romario reset their clash. Romario wonders how a couple of judges are able to stand toe-to-toe against them, attributing Q and C's success to their superb teamwork and coordination. At the same time, we see Judge B continuing his battle against the other Knox priests, while Judge O has a one-on-one match against Jang. Jang asks O why she's not using her red dragon even though it probably has the ability to melt down a Knox bishop with a single breath. This makes Jang think that O is planning something. In reply, O tells her opponent that she was just reminiscing about the time she first claimed the red dragon. In addition to that, she expresses her intent to turn Jang, aka the Black Dragon, into her own borrowed power once she's done with him. They square up again, and O secretly tells her red dragon to stand by until she gives it the signal to launch an attack. Judge O and Jang clash again, as she uses a technique named a nest of a dragon to turn her sword into fire. While this is happening, Gyeomji, Poom Wang, and Jang Mi have just finished knocking out a wave of Knox followers at Sector 34. Gyeomji tells his teammates that they have to deliver a certain box to Huey, but they're soon caught in battle again when another gang of followers charge at them. Inside the king's chamber, the old man asks the Knox followers inside the central control room how their power lenderization operation is going. The follower reports that they still need 10% more energy to fulfill their plan. To make up for the deficit, the king orders his men to suck off all the remaining energy from everyone in the stadium. The followers are shocked to hear this, but they comply anyway. With a press of a button, the energy stones do their work and begin absorbing the tournament spectators' life force. Not too far away, Judge S blocks and parries Romario's attacks. Q tries to back up his teammate, but Romario contorts his body and tries to shoot Q with another energy blast, which sends him flying back. When Q lands, Sha Chen is right behind him preparing for another devastating blow. But he reveals that it's all been another ruse, as Judge C teleports behind Sha Chen and subdues her. At the same time, Romario approaches Judge S and notices that he's standing right behind O's red dragon. We then get the big reveal that the judges have been planning this all along. Specifically, they coordinated their attacks up to this point so that the two bishops would be right in front of the red dragon's line of fire. With everything in place, Judge O orders the red dragon to blast Romario and Sha Chen. Romario tries to leap away from the dragon fire, but he discovers that Judge Q has planted a playing card during their previous clash, which has sprung to activate Joker's prank and hold the bishop in place. At the same time, Judge C has Sha Chen locked where she's standing. The female bishop asks him if he's ready to die with her, but Judge C uses his replacement ability to teleport away, just as the dragonfire is about to engulf Sha Chen. The dragon's attack is so powerful that it shakes up the entire stadium. And in the aftermath, we find out that Sha Chen has survived in spite of getting hit at near point-blank range. So, Judge Q and C try to finish the job, but they're surprised when they see that Sha Chen's face has transformed into something resembling a monster. Daewi arrives to fix it by landing the fist of the Black Turtle right at the bishop's face. However, it's not enough to put a stop to the rampaging Sha Chen. She instantly recovers from the hit and tries to attack Daewi, but Mira jumps in on the action and hits her with an overhead slash. Still, this isn't enough to take down Sha Chen, so Judge Q makes the call and tells Daewi and Mira to head over to the central control room now while they deal with the bishop. Sha Chen tries to chase after the two young warriors, but Q blocks her path, telling her to finish what they've started. Meanwhile, Judge O feeds her red dragon with a couple of gold bars for a job well done. Jang turns around, thinking that the rest of his teammates have all been taken out. To his surprise, the other priests are revealed to have survived the red dragon's flames. They wonder how they were able to do it, to which one of them tells his pals that it was because of Romario. It turns out that Romario has survived the red dragon's attack as well. Not only that, but he was able to use his abilities to lessen the power of the dragon flame from earlier in order to save the priests. Judge O sees Romario still standing and regrets how she decreased the red dragon's output. At the same time, Romario orders the priest to go after Daewi and Mira while he and Sha Chen deal with the judges. They run past Judge Q, and he even gets a compliment from one of the priests, Sagat, telling him that their efforts in trying to stop the bishop were not bad. However, Q doesn't have any time to relish this. That's because Sha Chen is fully recovered in front of him and is now preparing for another clash. Daewi and Mira run as fast as they can until they reach the light at the end of the passageway. They enter it and find themselves on the bridge leading to the central control room. Below them, the match between Team France and Judge P's marionettes continues to heat up. Mira and Daewi don't stop running, but the entrance to the control room just a few feet away, Mira realizes that they're almost done with their mission. All that's left now is to enter the room and take over the stadium with the help of the USB that Judge P made for them. However, the Knox priests reach Mira and Daewi just as they're about to reach the control room. While this is happening, we discover that the presence Huey felt earlier when they reached the end of the passageway leading to the King's Chamber belongs to none other than the Dantes. Huey fends off a couple of the clones, but Unyo reminds him to save his energy for the upcoming battle against the King. Huey is reluctant to do this, considering there's now an entire army of Dantes in front of them, but Unyo insists on sticking to their original plan even though she has no idea how long she could hold out against the horde of Dantes. Mira and Daewi, on the other hand, have found themselves trapped on the bridge when Knox priest Malchik uses his borrowed power, the Mud Golem, to subdue them. Mira then summons Red Toa to escape, but Sagat uses his hand to bisect the magical horse. This forces Mira and Daewi to land right on the bridge again. Mira catches an arrow aimed at Daewi's eye from Priest Fang Wu's national treasure, JB's bow, with the palm of her hand. Daewi expresses his concern for Mira, but she reassures him that it's nothing but a flesh wound. She removes the arrow from her hand and they make another run towards the central control room just as Fang Wu launches another volley of arrows. Daewi can feel that they're overmatched right now, that they're surely going to get taken out if the priests catch them. In the meantime, Judge P senses that Mira and Daewi are near their goal, so she uses her abilities to open the door to the central control room for a few moments. However, the priests manage to catch Mira before they could reach the other end of the bridge, so Daewi chooses to come back for his girlfriend and free Mira from the priest's clutches. With the door to the central control room closing in front of them, Daewi decides to use a technique called Blue Dragon Reflex to give Mira a boost and send her flying into the doorway. Mira reaches the central control room in the nick of time, but the door closes right behind her, leaving Daewi to contend with the group of priests on the other side. One of the priests cracks Daewi with a body shot before telling his teammates to go after Mira. But Daewi gets back on his feet and tells his opponents that nobody is going to get past him. Inside the central control room, Mira tries to double back and help Daewi. She bangs on the closed door, which prompts Judge P to tell her that the only way to open it now is to get to the end of the room and take over the stadium's supercomputer, Noah. But Mira's not hearing any of it. She tells P that she's going to break down the door to get Daewi. She prepares to hit it with Wolwang's swordsmanship, Galaxy Split, but Mira suddenly hears Daewi's voice from the other side telling her to stop. So she cancels her attack as Daewi tells her to stick to their original plan and take control of the stadium. He reminds Mira that everyone's risking their life in this mission, so the best chance for everyone to survive is to take control of the stadium. All of a sudden, Daewi's speech is interrupted when one of the Knox priests grabs him by the neck. The priest threatens Mira that he's going to tear Daewi limb from limb if she doesn't come out of the control room, but Daewi shuts up the cultist with a knee to the chin. This just angers the priest further, so he proceeds to barrage Daewi with a technique called Southern Tai Chi Quick Shot, Fists of Fury. It culminates with the priest trying to twist Daewi's abdomen with a powerful palm strike, which causes Mira to nearly go into shock from the other side of the bridge. However, she immediately discovers that Daewi's still alive. In fact, even the priest who attacked him is impressed with how he survived this salvo. Sagat then tells all the other priests that they should stop playing around and just tear the door down to reach Mira. In the meantime, Daewi confesses his love for Mira again and promises her not to worry, that he'll survive this ordeal. Mira ultimately puts her faith in Daewi and heads deeper into the control room. She makes easy work of the Knox followers blocking her path, slicing nearly 50 of them before reaching the end of the central control room. She finally reaches the end of the control room to find no one and spots the USB ports where she can stick the thumb drive. But then, a couple more Knox priests come out of the shadows to block Mira's path. This time, it's Big Man and Schneider, a couple of Knox cultists that Mira had already faced back at the Sage Realm. She wastes no time and lunges at them before they could finish making their threats. Both Big Man and Schneider barely dodge her sword, as Mira leaps several feet away to reset their encounter. Schneider takes notice of Mira's improved speed since their last meeting, but she then reveals a special surprise for their opponent, as Schneider calls in a rookie priest among their ranks. Well, rookie is a bit of an understatement, because it turns out that the guy is none other than Rayu, who's basically Mira's senior in terms of the Wolwang sword style. Rayu walks toward Mira as he commends her skills. He pulls out his blade and surprisingly severs Schneider and Bigman's torso to make sure no one interferes with his much-awaited showdown with the swordswoman. A second later, Bigman and Schneider are able to recover with the help of their own abilities. Unsurprisingly, they pretty much brand Rayu a traitor and prepare to punish the so-called rookie. But Rayu just teleports behind the two priests again and pretty much chops them up using Wolwang swordsmanship, Sleet Storm. The whole display causes Mira to wonder if she and Rayu are even using the same sword style, given how efficient and deadly he is with his blade. But Mira doesn't let it stop her from attempting to take the upper hand by striking first and striking hard at her opponent. Mira tries to stab Rayu in the face, but he dodges it along with her follow-up diagonal slash. Rayu continues to dance his way around Mira's barrage, while she forces herself to move faster. Mira's feeling the pressure. She knows that Daewi and her other allies' lives might depend on her succeeding in her mission. Ultimately, Rayu finds an opening in Mira's defense, so he pulls out his sword and lands a single downward slash right in front of Mira. It takes her a split second to realize that Rayu has sliced her from the shoulder down to her thigh, as Rayu expresses a bit of regret for having to kill a fellow Wolwang sword-style practitioner. Meanwhile, the group of priests can't believe it when they see that Daewi is still standing after taking a huge beating from them. One of them wonders why he's not using his borrowed power, to which Sagat reveals that Daewi's unable to, because the king took out one of his eyes. The same priest who asked it then charges at Daewi and proceeds to wallop him with a powerful side hammer fist. The priest continues to gloat after hitting Daewi, as he goes on full creeper mode and tells him how they're going to play around with Mira when they're done with him. Well, the fat priest shouldn't have run his mouth, because that comment ends up making Daewi angry. And as they'd soon find out, they're not going to like him when he's angry. First, Daewi grabs the fat priest by the arm. At this moment, only Fang Wu has the brains to realize that their enemy has become cornered, making Daewi more dangerous than before. And as if on cue, Daewi proceeds to crush the fat priest right on with his bare hand. We then get a short flashback from when Daewi was a kid. Back then, his best friend Sun Tai gave him the nickname Mad Cow for having an explosive temper. In the present, the Knox priest experienced the Mad Cow's rage firsthand. Daewi chastises the fat priest for talking about his girl like that before sending him flying with a powerful left uppercut straight to the midsection. But the fat priest isn't going off that easy. As soon as he starts flying, Daewi pulls him back and sends him to sleep with a devastating move called Kyokushin Karate, Chokuzuki. Another priest rushes Daewi with a flying kick, but he just grabs the fool's leg mid-air, pulls the priest close to him, and makes him eat Daewi's left fist. The two remaining priests, Sagat and Malchik, don't have the time to react when they see this. That's because Daewi has teleported right behind the two cultists and promptly takes him out with a kick. Daewi's momentum is interrupted when Fang Wu launches 4 arrows into his torso, but the Kyokushin Karate practitioner just eats this up and dispatches Fang Wu with the wave of the blue dragon. The dust settles and Daewi tries to recompose himself. Suddenly, Malchik's mud golem creeps up behind her hero to slap him down with its huge hands, but Daewi easily blows a hole into the mud golem with a masterful body shot. Back in the middle of the God of High School World Tournament's final match, Judge P's Mira puppet has gotten the upper hand in its bout against Andre. Judge P successfully barrages the Frenchman with techniques like the executive P-style Wolwang swordsmanship, Arc Moon Slash, and violent Quake Slash. Andre notices that Mira's fighting like a completely different person with the way she increased her speed. Meanwhile, Judge P continues to manipulate her marionette deep inside their home base. She ultimately finds an opening in Andre's defenses and activates P-type Bullwang swordsmanship Hao Shokuken to finish her opponent, as the mirror puppet lets out a powerful wave in the middle of the ring. But their bout is interrupted when the spectators finally realize that everyone on the stands is falling one by one like flies due to the energy stones. To make matters worse, the masses of people stampede toward the exit when they see an explosion rock the bridge to the central control room hanging right above the arena. The audience members desperately bang on the exit doors to get out, but they soon get taken out when the energy stones continue their work. At this point, even Andre notices what's happening inside the arena. The mirror marionette tries to attack him again, which forces Andre to defend himself and plead with the puppet to take notice of what's happening around them. At the same time, the announcer realizes that the final match has become meaningless, so he decides to walk away from his referee duties. The announcer reveals that he knows that the mirror inside the arena is just a puppet, and he aims to look for whoever is pulling its strings, as a couple of Knox followers open an exit for him. Back in Sector 34, Gyeomji, Poomwang, and Jangmi have just finished taking out the squad of Knox followers who arrived to stop them earlier. But as before, more cultists make their way toward the group's location. Before the horde reaches them, however, Gyeomji and his team are surprised when a slab of rock crushes a couple of cultists from out of nowhere. They then see that Dusik Kim has arrived in Sector 34 looking for his truant client, Mujin Park. Kim notices the couple of cultists he just killed with the slab of rock and worries that he accidentally took out Mujin. However, Gyeomji immediately approaches the loan shark and tells him that the man is still alive. Plus, Gyeomji tries to ask him to come with them so that he could get hold of his client. Kim, on the other hand, correctly surmises that Gyeomji is just planning on using him. But the tension in the room dissipates when Poomwang approaches him. We then find out that Kim and Poomwang have known each other for a long time now, with Kim calling Poomwang the Iron Hammer. He admits his surprise to find out that Poomwang is still fighting, especially after having heard rumors that he was now living a quiet life. Poomwang tells Kim that he recently got into university, which prompts Kim to express his disappointment. According to him, it would have been nice to have Poomwang join his crew, although he admits to himself that it's impressive that Poomwang managed to enter university at this age. Poomwang then informs Kim that Gyeomji is telling the truth, that they know where to find Mujin Park. So he offers the loan shark to help them in exchange for finding Mujin. Kim thinks Poomwang has gotten soft after all these years, but he ultimately agrees to the offer. That is, under one condition. Kim tells him that he'd join their party if Poomwang fights him right then and there, just like they did back when the two of them were in high school. Poomwang is just about to accept the challenge when Jangmi steps in and tells Kim that they don't need his help. At that moment, Kim notices Jangmi has her arms wrapped around Poomwang and correctly guesses that the two are a couple. The loan shark starts to laugh and let everyone know that this is becoming really fun. A few Knox followers try to interrupt Kim's conversation with the team, so he blows a hole through an entire section of Sector 34 to take them out. After that, he finally agrees to help out Poomwang and the others. All he asks in return is that he gets his hands on Mujin when they find him. According to Kim, he's going to mess up Mujin Park for messing with his money. Kim proves to be a fearsome ally too, and even Gyeomji can't help but feel bad for their enemies when Kim basically runs through them without breaking a sweat. Somewhere else, deep within Knox's base, the energy stones try to influence Taejin and work their magic to turn him into the new god of fight. Taejin starts hearing voices in his head tempting him to accept the king's offer so that he can become the greatest fighter in the world. The legendary warrior almost succumbs to the energy stone's influence when he suddenly hears a voice asking him if he's sick or something. He opens his eyes to see that former Knox bishop and ITF Taekwondo master Lee Sujin is standing in front of him. Sujin is just about ready to rescue the old man when a random Knox follower tries to sucker punch her from behind. Sujin senses this and counters with a sidekick, which Taejin instantly recognizes as a northern-style ITF sideways kick. We find out that Sujin is not alone too, as Ma Bora and Gang Manseok defeat a couple more Knox cultists standing in their way. Taejin looks on and notices that Ma Bora is using northern-style ITF Baekdu, while Manseok employs northern-style ITF Huichuk. The sight reminds Taejin of his old friend and master Suhyuk, one of ITF Taekwondo's pioneers and Sujin's grandfather. Taejin expresses his relief upon finding out that Sujin is Suhyuk's descendant after they finish taking care of the weak cultists. The legendary warrior even can't help but talk to himself at this moment, telling Suhyuk that his legacy is looking alive and well. Taejin's reminiscence is interrupted, though, when Manseok steps up and starts mocking the old man. Manseok continues to talk smack about Taejin, which makes him lose his temper and repeatedly kick the delinquent's face. With their little squabble over, Sujin tells Taejin that she came here to repay her family's debt to Taejin. Ma Bora recognizes Taejin as Mori's grandpa and tells him how much she admires the boy for being a strong warrior. Hearing this, Taejin asks Sujin if she and Mori had ever fought, and if so, who won. Taejin is pretty confident that his and Mori's renewal Taekwondo style is better than Sujin's ITF techniques. But she lies to the old man and tells him that she kicked Mori's butt when they faced off against each other. This causes Taejin to have a tantrum, telling Sujin that he's going to avenge his family's honor after he gets free from his restraints. Back at the passageway, Mujin notices that he's getting tired too quickly. He doesn't know what's going on, but Mandok does, as the Knox bishop wonders why the king would approve to activate the energy stones inside their stadium. Meanwhile, Hanriang starts to feel pressure when he realizes that they're outnumbered by the Dante clones. To make matters worse, he knows Mujin can't make use of his technique's full capabilities due to the small space they're currently in. A couple of Dantes attack Hanriang, but he's able to block them with his staff. Still, he calls for Mujin to come up with a plan so that they could escape certain doom inside this tunnel. Mujin, on the other hand, feels like he's out of options. He feels even more worried when he turns around to see that more backup Knox worshippers are arriving to help Mandok. However, the platoon of worshippers are immediately taken out when Kim finally arrives at Mujin's location. Everyone from Mujin to Mandok freeze on their tracks when they see the loan shark enter the scene. As you'd expect, Kim's first priority is to call up Mujin and get the money he's owed. He gives Mujin a couple of options. Either pay now and Kim is going to let this whole deal slide, or Mujin could refuse and Kim will have to kick his ass. Yeomji tries to get between Mujin and Kim, but Pumwang holds him back, telling his teammate they don't stand a chance against these two members of the Six. In the middle of the battlefield, Kim approaches Mujin and tells him that he's not going to weasel his way out of this problem. Meanwhile, Mujin uses the few seconds he has left to try and persuade Kim into working with him. According to Mujin, Kim is one of the best allies he could get into the fold. All he needs to do is come up with a way to convince him. Kim cocks back his right hand for a devastating punch, and it takes Mujin a few precious nanoseconds to finally formulate a way to get Dusek on his team. He tells him 4 words: the pound of flesh. From there, Kim stops mid-punch and listens to Mujin come up with a new offer, that he'll give Kim the internal organs of the Six if he decides not to kill Mujin. Kim pauses and does the math in his head. To make sure he accepts the deal, Mujin even sweetens the proverbial pot by telling the loan shark that he'll add in the internal organs of the judges if he helps them. This makes Kim see all the dollar signs entering his bank account once he sells all those high-quality organs in the black market. So he makes his decision. No one's ever laying a finger on Mujin and his incoming products. Somewhere else, we find out that fellow 6-member Tai Chi master, Na Bon Chim, has emerged from his training. Meanwhile, Beck arrives in front of the God of High School World Tournament Stadium with a mission of his own, to rescue Uma. We then get up to speed on what's been happening with Daewi. It turns out that he's destroyed several of Malchik's golems in the meantime. The fat priest he took down earlier recovers and tries to get the jump on him, but Daewi fends him off with the kick of the Red Phoenix, which breaks the fat priest's foot. Another priest lunges at him, and Daewi blocks his punch. Unknown to his enemies, Daewi is right in the middle of charging up his most devastating move, the Constellation Match-style 4 Guardians, the ultimate basics. However, he notices he's short on time to fully charge up this technique when Sagat attacks him. So Daewi decides to conserve all his energy and release it at the right moment. He then sees the fat priest a short distance away. We find out that this guy's name is Zig, and he's currently lost all his blubber when he summons his borrowed power, Ifrit. Zig tries to punch Daewi with an Ifrit-charged punch, but the karate practitioner reveals that he's had enough time to focus his energies and release his 4 guardians, the ultimate basics technique to counter Zig. The priest is sent flying, but this leaves Daewi open for the other priest to punch him in the back of the head. Still, Daewi just eats this up and slams his opponent into the control room's closed door with a powerful heel kick. Daewi turns to see the door to the control room crumbling that he fails to notice Fangwu has just summoned his borrowed power, Jebe, and is preparing to shoot him with more arrows. Fangwu tells Daewi to not take this bout personally, since he has his own reasons for fighting for Knox. But Daewi doesn't hear any of it, as he charges straight at Fangwu and hits him with a flying knee. Still, Fangwu is able to drive Daewi back when he pushes one of the arrows deep within the boy's chest. He then calls for the rest of his allies to gang up on Daewi while he's cornered. Daewi sees this, and with no other choice, he attempts to charge up another powerful technique, Kyokushin Karate 4 Guardians, the ultimate basics 2. Below them, in the middle of the arena, the remaining spectators continue to bang on the exit doors to escape the ensuing chaos. Things just get worse for them when they see that the bridge where Daewi and the priests are having their fight has come crashing down in the middle of the stadium. The dust settles and we find an unconscious Daewi lying face flat on the bridge's wreckage. Curiously enough, we see that he manages to take down Zig and Malchik along the way, as only 3 other remaining priests are active at this moment. One of the priests wonders what technique Daewi was trying to unleash before they knocked him out. Fangwu tells him that their opponent was gearing up for a huge blast, which they can't believe. According to them, a technique like that is the ultimate level that fighters can reach. So it shocks them to discover that someone as young as Daewi almost pulled it off. In the end, Sagat tells his allies that they should head over to the central control room. He takes a step toward that direction only to find out Daewi has become conscious again when he grabs Sagat by the leg. Daewi musters up all his remaining strength to tell him that they can't pass, as one of the priests tries to repeatedly stop him. The same priest attempts to permanently take out Daewi with a technique called Southern-style Tai Chi, Hammer Strike, but Daewi ends up chopping his leg off in the blink of an eye. Seeing this, Sagat expresses his respect for Daewi and asks him what it would take to make him give up. But again, Daewi tells him that no one is going to get past him. He then thinks about all of his comrades and how they'll be in danger if Daewi loses to them. He knows that he can't have Mori helping him at this moment. Regardless, Daewi is certain that he has to do everything he can in order to protect Mira. Sagat tries to attack Daewi while he's still down, but Fangwu stops him. Instead, Fang Wu asks Daewi if he would consider calling it quits now, especially knowing that he has the talent to become a legendary martial artist. Simply put, it would be a waste for Daewi to lose his life here. However, Daewi continues to get up, all the while telling himself to keep going. Fang Wu then asks him if he's ready to die today, to which Daewi responds that he never once considered dying whenever he's in a fight. He finally gets on his feet and declares that he's going to live and protect Mira at all costs. Back at the heart of the central control room, Mira has just recovered from Ryu's devastating slash. She tries to fend him off with her sword, but Rayu puts more pressure on her by unleashing Wo Wang's swordsmanship, subtle slide to try and end her. Mira leans back to dodge Ryu's technique as the two trade blows with each other. Both Mira and Rayu continue to exchange lethal slashes until Mira finds an opening and manages to cut open Ryu's right shoulder with a cut. She then resets and summons her borrowed power, Lu Bu Fen Qian. All the while, she remembers a nugget of wisdom that Rayu told her in the past, about how there are two types of people in the world. On one hand, you have those who buckle under pressure. On the other hand, there are people who perform better under these circumstances, and they're the same people that Rayu calls talented. In the present, Rayu finally acknowledges Mira's talent as a Wo Wang sword master and even declares her as his successor. Rayu is pleased that he's found a worthy warrior to carry the Wo Wang legacy and can't help but wonder how Mira got so desperate to unlock her full potential in battle. All of a sudden, Mira's vision starts to blur, which allows Rayu to find an opening to slash her left cheek. Mira has yet to recover when she notices Ryu's blade on her other cheek. Again, she reacts in the blink of an eye and only gets nicked on her right cheek. Mira can tell that Rayu is aiming for her throat, but another opening in her defense allows Rayu to get close and impale her with a sword. He then tells her that he's not going to go easy on her just because he's chosen her as his successor. In fact, Rayu has decided that he's going to kill Mira if he starts to feel that her talents are falling behind. But what Mira does next shocks the Wo Wang swordsman. When Rayu turns, he finds Mira has firmly grabbed his sword's blade. This allows Mira to hold him in place and try to chop off his head. Rayu barely dodges her counterattack, but his forehead catches the swing and gets opened up. They continue their clash, and Rayu kicks up debris right into Mira's face. This forces her to blindly take an overhead swing. Mira then shakes off the dust from her eyes and gets back her composure. But Rayu suddenly appears and kicks her in the gut before slashing both of her thighs. Mira recoils from the hits and steps several feet back from Rayu, while he relishes their duel. She can feel her entire body giving out on her, as Mira questions whether she's given enough already. All it takes for her to snap out of it is a mental image of Daewi and Mori a split second later. With that thought, Mira further solidifies her resolve and finds a way to distract Rayu by slicing one of the exhaust valves inside the central control room. She then remembers her true mission, to take over Noah using the thumb drive from Judge P. So she rushes towards the USB ports near the supercomputer, but Rayu stabs her right in the hand before she could stick the thumb drive in. Rayu then chastises his successor for trying to pull the stunt. And when he realizes that Mira is actually after Noah, Rayu chooses to further mess with her by showing her live footage of what's happening all around the stadium. First, he shows Mira the scene below them where spectators are dying left and right from the energy stones. But what ultimately riles Mira up is the live footage of Daewi, who's currently near unconscious again and subdued by Fang Wu. Rayu takes notice of it when Mira looks at Daewi and Noah's screens. And in a way, Rayu gives her a pep talk by telling Mira that she might have enough time to save him if she could get there quickly enough. As always, Rayu reminds Mira to become a monster if she wants to reach her full potential. He clashes with her again, and Mira ducks and weaves through his sword strikes. Rayu continues to taunt her in the middle of their fight, while Mira puts all her focus into becoming faster in order to save Daewi. Rayu revels in the heat of their battle, as Mira desperately tries to dig deep and get stronger. All of a sudden, she feels Lu Bu's spirit entering her body. A second later, we find out that Mira has successfully formed a direct contact with her borrowed power, turning her hair white and giving her the strength she's been looking for. Rayu can feel that Mira is gearing up for a powerful attack, something he had never seen her do before. He tries to meet it with Wo Wang's swordsmanship mountain split, and the two warriors strike at each other at the same time. Rayu thinks he's gotten the better of Mira, but he finds out that she purposely allowed her right arm to be chopped off so that she could use her left hand to finally insert the USB into Noah and take control of the stadium. Mira tells him that there's no way she's going to become a monster. Instead, she's going to save everyone and protect Daewi. Somewhere else, Unyu proves that she's an absolute menace when she takes out scores upon scores of Dante clones coming their way. She keeps it a secret that she can't keep this up much longer, but successfully takes a couple more Dante clones out when she notices them creeping above Huey. Like before, Unyu reminds Huey to conserve his energy until his fight with the king. He does as he's told but wonders how Unyu plans on defeating the endless hordes of Dantes coming for them. At the same time, Judge P uses her abilities to fully take control of Noah with the help of the USB. She has successfully taken over 94% of the supercomputer systems at this point, but unknown to her, the announcer is making his way toward P's location. Back in the central control room, Rayu expresses his disappointment in Mira after she sacrificed her right arm. He thinks there's no way she can use a sword now, so Rayu decides to take out Mira. He walks up behind her and tries to lop her head off, but Rayu is surprised when he notices that Mira has blocked his attack with her sword. In one fluid motion, Mira spins around and uses her left arm to cut open Ryu's throat with her blade. It works too, and Rayu can't help but be amazed with Mira's gambit. But he immediately retracts it a second later and tells her that the reason he lost is because he got arrogant when Rayu thought Mira would be useless without her right arm. In response, Mira simply tells Rayu that he should keep pressing on his wound if he wants to stay alive. She then remembers T's advice back when he was alive, telling her to use her power without it controlling her. Mira reveals to Rayu that it's the same lesson that allowed her to keep fighting and ultimately defeat him, not the weird ideas that Rayu had been spouting since they met. Mira walks away from him, but unknown to her, Rayu is about to literally stab her in the back. Back at the passageway, Gyeomji has finally reached Huey and Eunyo. He desperately runs away from the Dante clones chasing him and manages to toss the special box he was meant to deliver to Huey. At the same time, Judge P has completed taking over Noah and declares that the door to the king's chamber has been opened. Huey catches Gyeomji's special delivery just as a horde of Dante clones dogpile him. Huey powers through and raises the box in his hand. We then find out that this package contains none other than the Monkey King's gourd. And just as the door to the king's chamber slides open, Huey is able to use the gourd to release the army of monsters sealed within it. Back in the central control room, we discover that Mira has successfully defended against Ryu's backstab attempt. In fact, she managed to impale him with her magical blade. In his dying breath, Rayu tells Mira that it doesn't matter if she doesn't think she's a monster. Given that she's already killed scores of her enemies up until this point, Rayu is sure that Mira has already transformed into one, a fact that he's pleased about. Mira makes her way out of the control room, and with Rayu left alone and dying, his life flashes before his eyes. Rayu remembers how he walked the path of the sword and was only forced to join Knox when he contracted a deadly disease. It turns out that Rayu wanted to gain immortality with Knox's help. His thoughts then drift towards the cultists who seemingly died for nothing in pursuit of immortality. But he does admit that people like Bishop R might just be onto something. In the end, Rayu dies thinking of his old friend and rival, the late Judge T, aka Shim Bongsa. Meanwhile, Mandok is shocked to see numerous pairs of eyes light up in the darkness of the passageway. Mujin then tells his rival that he's made some major upgrades this time around. Mira continues to hobble her way towards Daewi's location, and she can only pray for her man to be safe. Meanwhile, the priests get ready to head for the central control room when a lone figure appears in front of them, someone who Fang Wu recognizes. Somewhere else, Gyeomji has a flashback from when he first received the package containing the gourd. At the time, he had planned on tampering with the package just to see what's in it, but the delivery guy told him messing with the box would suck out all of his borrowed power. In the present, Gyeomji witnesses that the citizens of the Sage Realm have emerged to wreak havoc on their enemies. A dragon straight up eats a group of Dante clones, while Heite and its mother blast them away. Orguk's monkey warriors have also joined the fray, as they take down more clones with the aid of Uma's Minotaur subjects. At that point, Gyeomji thinks that he made the right call to not mess with the box when he had the chance. Huey then gets surprised when a couple of monkey warriors stare at him. But then, we immediately find out that this group of monkey warriors are none other than Rayu and his pals, who have since grown into proper martial artists. We also find out that the elder monkey war veterans from the Sage Realm have also arrived to help Huey out. And when they realize they're in Huey's presence, who's technically part of the Monkey King, all the citizens of Orguk bow down before the boy. Their moment is interrupted when one of the Dante clones impales a monkey warrior with his bare hand. In retaliation, the other monkey warriors gang up on the Dante clone and stab him multiple times with their own hands. They prepare for another clash with the clone army, as Rayu declares that even though the monkey warriors can't hold their ground against the Dante in a one-on-one match, they can definitely overpower them with teamwork and sheer numbers. At the same time, the Oxen people rejoice as they start to sense Uma's presence nearby. In turn, Uma herself notices that reinforcements have arrived while she's in captivity. The battle between the Dante army and Sage Realm citizens rages on, with the monster and human alliance successfully defeating Knox's clones. Huey then finds an opening and runs toward the king's chamber. Moments later, Huey arrives in front of Okwang, who greets him by calling Huey as Emoji. Huey then tells the old man that he should have had barbadium on his chamber's interiors if he didn't want to get infiltrated so easily. At the same time, the surviving spectators of the God of High School World Tournament Finals manage to finally escape the stadium when one of the exits open. A couple of worshippers tried to block their path, but members from the eliminated teams, such as Samuel, Mujahideen, and Anna, take them out and decide to fight against Knox. Kyoichi, Sugihara, and Midori of Team Japan join them as well. Meanwhile, Midori senses that her prophecy has finally come to pass. That's because not too far away, we find Mira cradling Daewi's seemingly dead body on her lap. She tells him to get up, but he remains unresponsive. Mira starts to desperately scream for Daewi to open his eyes. Even his borrowed power, Heite, arrives on the scene to try and heal Daewi's wounds, but his bleeding just won't stop. We then see Daewi slowly opening his eyes to see Mira crying her eyes out in front of him. But then he starts having a near-death experience where Daewi sees Sungtai's spirit paying him a visit. They check up on each other, and Daewi tells him that he's met someone precious to him, referring to Mira. In response, Sungtai tells him to just continue resting. Suddenly, Mira sees Daewi get back on his feet as he continues to utter the words, "No one can pass." Mira eventually realizes that Daewi's doing this instinctually. That is to say, he's still unconscious. But Daewi's resolve to protect Mira at all costs has overridden his body at this point. Seeing this, Mira cries even harder and gives Daewi a hug. With the last ounce of his strength, he hands over the bandage covering his blind eye to Mira and tells her how happy he is that he got to see her for one last time. Daewi then collapses and falls to his knees. Mira catches him, but she knows that this is it. Daewi has died. In fact, even Daewi's older sister, Daryang, feels her brother's passing back at their home. Both Mira and Haete cry their eyes out in front of Daewi's remains. She starts desperately apologizing, blaming herself, and even blaming Mori for not appearing to help them. All in all, Mira is devastated and her emotions have understandably gotten the better of her at this point, as she starts to nearly break and shout that she doesn't need any of this. All of a sudden, former judge and current Knox Bishop Ultio R appears right in front of Mira, Daewi, and Haete. Curiously, R proceeds to stop Mira's right arm from bleeding out. She and Haete brace themselves for another battle, but R simply asks Mira if she wants to save Daewi's life. This causes her to pause, as R tells her that he will resurrect Daewi if she works with him. In response, Mira thinks of Rayu's words for a moment, but how she should become a monster to protect those she loves. A second later, Mira slashes the section of the bridge where R is standing and causes the entire wreckage to crumble further. In the aftermath, Mira sees Daewi's lifeless body falling several feet down to the arena, while she holds onto R's hand as he floats high above the stadium with Haete. R tells Mira not to worry about Daewi's body, because as long as she holds up her end of the deal, he's going to make sure that Daewi comes back to life. Unknown to them, the original Jin Mori has witnessed all of this unfold from the fox speed he has. A short distance away, Ilpio interrogates the incapacitated Arpeggio who's lying motionless on top of Pearl Triller's corpse. After that, he tells Mori that they can find someone with the ability to move between dimensions deep within the skyscraper. All they need to do is catch this entity alive. Mori agrees to it and tells Raccoon and the Raccoon family that he and Ilpio will be moving quickly from here on out. As such, neither of them could guarantee their safety, so it would be best if they all went home. However, if they decide to stay, Mori only asks them to do one thing: to not hold back. He then announces that they're all going to blitz through the other remaining floors of the megastructure until they reach the first floor. A forest suddenly grows out of Pearl Triller's lifeless body, as a small flame-like chunk of energy appears in front of Mori and Ilpio. Ilpio grabs the floating bit of energy and wonders what it is, while Mori asks everyone if they're ready to continue their quest. Inside the passageway, we find out that Bishop Sha Chen has subdued judges Q, B, and C after their clash. At this point, we get to see that Sha Chen has shed off her usual Knox robe to reveal her personal, sexy suit. She's just about ready to take out the three judges when C thinks on his feet and uses his disguise skill, log switch, to let him and his comrades escape Sha Chen's grasp. B wonders how their opponents can be so powerful, while C tells him that a single clean hit from her would knock them out. However, Judge Q knows something that his two friends don't. It's not that Sha Chen isn't using her borrowed power, it's that she can't use it. It's then revealed that Sha Chen lost her ability to channel her borrowed power after facing off against Sujin in the past. If you didn't know it by now, Sujin has the ability to seal a person's borrowed power with the help of Pandora. And that's exactly what she did to Sha Chen. Meanwhile, Knox Priest Jang and Judge O continue to have their sword fight. We then find out from Jang that nearly all the black dragons disappeared from the world after Sha Chen slaughtered them, and she didn't even use her borrowed power during that time. More concerning, however, is when Jang tells O that Romario is even more powerful than Sha Chen. We then get caught up with Judge S, who's currently busy trying his best to defend against Romario's attacks. S has been on the back foot this whole time, as he realizes that Romario's powers are just unbelievably strong. In fact, he's barely gotten back on his feet when Romario hits him with another blast of energy, forcing S to be on the defensive. Still, Romario commends S's abilities, but S knows that Romario is far beyond the usual Knox Bishop. We then discover that Romario has the most powerful borrowed power that stands above the rest, the spirit of Asura. Meanwhile, Romario wonders if rumors about S being as strong as the Six's members were just exaggerations, considering that all he's doing right now is blocking the Bishop's attacks. On the other end of the battlefield, Judge S analyzes the field and becomes all the more pressured when he finds out that even Romario's voice has the ability to control the minds of those who hear it. According to him, even protecting himself against this is tiring him out. Suddenly, all of the judges stop in their tracks when they hear P's voice telling them that everyone should prepare for their Plan B and head over to the central control room. P repeats the order just as she senses the announcer approaching. Q then asks P if Mira and Daewi are safe, to which he reports that Mira is currently missing and Daewi is dead. Judge Q is shocked when he hears this. But there's no time to mourn because Sha Chen suddenly pops in front of him. She punches Q, but he blocks it with the handle of his scythe, which causes his weapon to break. Sha Chen follows up with another life-ending punch, and Q knows that he's not fast enough to dodge it. He braces for impact but is surprised to find out that Sha Chen's attack doesn't land when he turns his head. That's because Judge B leapt between them and took the hit for Q, getting Sha Chen's entire fist lodged inside his abdomen. B then tells Q to keep his head in the game while he grabs Sha Chen's arm and prepares to self-destruct. Seeing this, Sha Chen hurls B away before he could complete charging up the technique. She then brings her attention back to Q and C. Judge Q then tells C to take the downed B to Judge S so that he could heal him. In the meantime, he's going to deal with Sha Chen by himself. Judge C obeys his friend's command, while Q squares up to the female bishop. He then remembers the lesson that Mujin taught him about, and it's revealed that it's a technique that allows Q to form a direct contract with the Joker so that he could instantly become as strong as a member of the Six. The direct contract allows Q to have full access to all the powers of the Joker, but there's one drawback. He can only remain in this form for 10 minutes. Afterwards, he's going to be totally incapacitated, or worse, he might even die from overexertion. Upon seeing this, Sha Chen mocks Q for being a descendant of the clown bloodline, but the judge tells her that this is the last time in her life that she's going to be laughing. At the same time, Romario launches another energy shot right at Judge S, who's gotten exhausted after this long stalemate. S resigns himself to defeat and accepts his death, but Judge C swoops in and saves him in the nick of time. Judge C then tells him to heal B. He gets on it, but asks about Judge Q at the same time. In fact, S is shocked when he finds out that Q decided to break his limiter and go all out against Sha Chen. Not too far away, we see Judge Q holding his own against the powerful bishop. He uses 8 of Hearts, one card to try and remotely backstab Sha Chen, but the bishop catches wind of it and destroys one of Q's clowns. So Q shuffles his deck and goes for 5 of Clovers, triple this time, sending a trio of clowns to attack the bishop. Like before, Sha Chen easily bisects the summoned clowns with her powerful punches. But then, Judge Q reshuffles and activates Space A, 3 of Diamonds, 2 cards, an ability that allows him to revive the clowns that Sha Chen has just taken out. The bishop easily defends against the resurrected clowns, but it turns out that this was another clever feint from Q. A second later, Sha Chen notices the ground beneath her tremble, as a gigantic clown head emerges from it and swallows her up. It's a technique called straight clovers that Q has just used, and one that, as before, Sha Chen destroys moments later. However, Judge Q continues to put pressure on his opponent. As soon as Sha Chen destroys the clown head, he summons another gigantic jester to drop on her. She counters this by piercing the huge clown and making it pop before she and Q clash in close quarters again. We then find out that Q has been planning this all along, as he reshuffles his cards again and comes up with a straight flush. This allows him to trap Sha Chen inside a checkered room known as Pantomime, as he declares that all his card inputs are complete. Meanwhile, Judge S has come up with a plan to take down Romario. He summoned his borrowed power, the Paladin Siegfried, and is currently focusing all of his energies on defense and healing to be his team's tank. Meanwhile, S has tasked Judge C with using his own borrowed power, the Spirit of Hattori Hanzo, to use a couple of techniques named Confusion and Close Range Deal against the powerful bishop. Lastly, we find out that B has successfully been revived and S has tasked him with using his Phoenix to act as their range damage dealer. Judge S then tells the rest of his team that they're going to get past Romario as quickly as they can, noting that Q might die if they don't make it in time to help him. We then get the full lowdown on what Judge Q actually did to Sha Chen before trapping her in the checkered room. A few seconds before that, the Knox bishop saw that Q's cards now had her image printed on each one of them. In the present, we discover that these same cards allow Judge Q to reflect any attack that Sha Chen performs. In fact, the bishop finds out about this the hard way, as she gets hit with her own punch when she first tries to hit Q inside Pantomime. However, Sha Chen correctly guesses that each attack reflecting card can only be used once, and given that Q has a full deck, it means that he can only use this ability 52 times. In addition to that, Sha Chen knows that Judge Q saved this technique for last because it's a dangerous move to begin with. To Sha Chen, all she needs to do is use up Q's 52 cards and she's sure that he'll have no moves left after that. So the Knox bishop and the Joker clash, with Sha Chen continuously powering through the reflected attacks until there's none left. By the time Judge Q loses all his cards, Sha Chen hits him with a solid left straight that causes his Joker mask to shatter. Q flies into a wall and Sha Chen thinks she's gotten the better of her opponent. However, she's shocked to find out that Q still had one more card up his sleeve. Q tells her that although his deck has 52 cards, the bishop forgot that it doesn't include the Joker card, Q's real ultimate technique. He explains that the condition to use his Joker card is to first spend all the other cards in his deck, and with the other 52 cards gone, that condition has been met. Q then gives us the big reveal. The Joker card has the ability to return all the damage its user has taken to his opponent. At that moment, Sha Chen starts to feel invisible punches hitting her face as the Joker card's power activates. But that's not all. In true shonen-style escalation, Q lets Sha Chen know that the Joker card also amplifies each hit by 100 times. Sha Chen gets absolutely pummeled by all the reflected attacks from the Joker card, but she still believes that she can get past the ordeal and ultimately take down Q. In response, Q tells her to just try doing that, as he takes a breather from the direct contract with the Joker. Not too far away, Judge C uses numerous clones to find an opening and slice up Romario. The Knox bishop eventually spots an opening and tries to hit C with an energy blast at point-blank range. C's got no time to dodge away, but we find out that Judge S has completely shielded him from Romario's attack using his National Treasure's power called Balmung Defensive Mode. C counterattacks, but Romario spots the attempt. He charges up another energy blast, but it's immediately cancelled when Judge B hits him in the mouth with Phoenix Fire. Still, they found themselves in a stalemate. According to B, there's no way that this fight is going to end if they just continue allowing Romario to reflect their attacks. S agrees, but he also knows one particular technique that Romario couldn't defend against. Just a few feet away from the action, Judge O continues to duel with Jang. She manages to damage him a bit, to which Jang gloats about how weak her attacks are. But O has other plans. She reveals to her opponent that she's purposefully not inflicting heavy damage on Jang. That's because, as she told him earlier, she's not here to kill Jang. She wants to absorb the Black Dragon's power and turn it into her own. Jang takes offense about becoming O's pet, so he unleashes his power and transforms into his polymorph form, the Black Dragon. In turn, O makes a red dragon, Chang-sik, take on its own polymorph form, a sultry red-headed half-dragon, half-human figure. Even Jang starts to think that the red dragon is cute, but he doesn't forget that he's in a battle. So Jang charges up a devastating technique called the Black Dragon Breath, a massive energy blast directed at his opponent. But instead of meeting the Black Dragon Breath head-on, O commands the red dragon to literally swallow up the energy blast. She then fuses the Black Dragon Breath with Chang-sik's own fiery energy blast before aiming it at Romario. Jang realizes that the judges have been planning this all along, but he's too late to warn Romario when O finally releases the energy she's collected with a move called Hosik plus Chang-sik Breath. As the energy blast makes its way toward Romario, Judge S, B, and C go for a coordinated attack on the ground. This wraps Romario into a classic pincer-style envelopment where he's forced to defend from one or the other. In the end, we see Romario screaming that he can handle this assault, as S, B, and C charge at him. At the same time, Judge Q arrives at their location to provide additional support for his team as he activates Joker again. Nearby, Judge O has seemingly defeated Jang once and for all, while from the outside, the energy blast that she has just released blows up huge chunks off of the stadium and its immediate vicinity. We then flash back to a few moments before Huey came face to face with the King of Knox. It turns out that Huey decided to go off on his own and meet Okwang by himself while the Human and Monster Alliance continues to put the beat down on the Dante clones. Unyu and Ryu's gang see Huey use Yoi to basically vault himself up to the highest floor of the chamber, as he disregards Unyu's pleas to go there together. In the present, we see Huey standing in front of the king, as the old man asks the Monkey's King clone if he's given any thought about his proposal. Hundreds of feet below, Unyu and the rest of their allies look up at the hole left in Huey's wake leading up to the king's private chamber. They decide to follow suit and provide backup for Huey, but the king uses his gravitational powers to prevent them from doing so. Huey tells them that he can handle the old man on his own and instructs everyone else to go help their other teammates. Several of the monkey warriors obey the command, but Unyu isn't having any of it. She calls for Yandan to hand her the Foxbee and uses it to fly up to the king's chamber. When she gets there though, she's absolutely shocked to find out that Huey has bent the knee and pledged his allegiance to the king. Okwang greets Unyu before mocking her about the decisions she's made up until this point, especially considering that Unyu is revealed to be the first ever person to master borrowed power, Eve. We then find out that Unyu hates the fact that, like the citizens of the Sage Realm, she was just an experiment of the gods. The king loses his patience after listening to Unyu's backtalk and straight up calls her a prostitute of the gods. He even asks her if she wants to step up and challenge him to a fight. The king then blathers on about how he's in a foul mood today because someone he cared for very much has just passed away. Huey asks the old man what he's talking about, and the king shows him the footage of Daewi's death. Huey is mortified to witness this, while Unyu blames the old man for putting kids like Daewi and Mira in life-threatening situations like this. She then lashes out at Huey and pretty much calls him a traitor. In response, Huey tells Unyu that the reason he chose to accept the king's proposal was because he felt like everyone is using young people like him, Mira, and Daewi to do their bidding. People like Mujin and Unyu herself. As such, Huey thinks that it's better to side with someone who could give him better benefits if he's going to be used as a pawn anyway. So he took his talents to Knox. Unyu then asks him what's going to happen to Jin Taejin now, to which Okwang tells her that he's agreed to hand him over to his enemies. But the old man has finally had enough chit-chat. He orders Huey, who he has renamed Demuji at this point, to prove his allegiance to him, and his first mission, annihilate Eve, aka Unyu. While all this is happening, Hanryang fights Mansok in close quarters combat. He gets in a few good thwacks of his staff before Mansok counters with a few swords aimed at his enemy's face, but Mujin is able to cancel Mansok's technique and save Hanryang using his gravitational powers. Mansok tries to remotely backstab Mujin with another one of his blades, but Kim's there to punch it away. As he puts it, no one is going to touch his merchandise. Mujin then forces Mansok to his knees and tries to literally crush him with his gravity-based power. But then, Mansok thanks Mujin for removing the taboo in the Sage Realm because it now allows him to unleash his full power. Mujin can feel his gravitational attack weakening as Mansok transforms. An explosion rocks the small passageway because of this, and Kim is forced to whisk Mujin away from the blast. Hanryang, on the other hand, isn't so lucky, as he gets caught in the explosion at near point-blank range. Back near the king's chamber, Ryu's gang of monkey warriors chose to disregard Huey's order and brute force their way up the stairs leading to the king's private room. They ultimately make it to the top only to see that Huey has seemingly stabbed Unyu right in the gut. Meanwhile, we found out that all of the Dante clones have been taken out during their clash with the Sage Realm's warriors. But curiously enough, a lone Dante clone gets back on his feet. This Dante clone is not long for the world though, as one of its genetic brothers sneaks up and kills him by absorbing his life force. Inside the king's private chamber, we find out that Huey has indeed stabbed Unyo, and he used a single finger to do it. Huey then reveals that he chose to attack Unyo at a spot on her body called the central chest in order to instantly kill her. Funnily enough, Unyo remains breathing at this point, as she chastises Huey for being a filthy traitor. Hearing this, Huey goes on a rant about how Daewi and Mira really didn't think of him as their friend, because all they saw was the real Jin Mori whenever they looked at him. Huey goes on to say that they're going to understand his actions if Mira and Daewi truly considered him as a real friend. Unyo then has a flashback from tens, if not hundreds of thousands of years ago. We see her crying in front of a man who's bound by magical strings, as a flock of birds eat his body. In the present, Unyo seemingly passes on, as she utters the words Lord Hwanyang. Rayu and his partner are in absolute shock when they witness Huey murder Unyo, so much so that they fail to notice the Dante clone from earlier sneaking up behind them. The Dante clone and the monkey warrior square up, but the king tells him that there's been enough bloodshed today. He then calls for the Dante clone and praises it for being the last clone standing. After that, he declares that it's time to hold up his end of the deal, so he reveals a few purple energy stones inside his chamber. The king then explains that the purple stones are called rough energy stones, and each one contains the cost for the gods lending their power to a human. He calls for Huey to come close and hold his hand, as Okwang channels power through his staff and into the traitorous boy. Huey starts to feel energy building up inside him and connecting to his flesh and blood, but the king ends up edging him when he stops channeling the spell. He then promises Huey that they'll continue once he recovers his strength, considering that his old age has made him more fatigable. Huey asks the king what exactly the rough stones can do and wonders if it can bring the dead back to life. In response, Okwang tells the boy that it's not impossible, but the process of resurrecting someone is a difficult one and comes at a high cost, the king's own life. Finding out about this surprises Huey, and the king explains that gods aren't really immortal. They're just powerful creatures who have longer lifespans than humans. Huey then asks Okwang if that's the reason why he created the Dante clones, to which the old man explains that the Dantes are his attempts at creating the perfect successor to his position. Still, Okwang reveals that the Dantes are still incomplete. They lack the individuality that a clone like Huey possesses. We then find out more about what happened in the world of God of High School eons ago. As the king explains, gods, humans, and monsters lived on Earth together in the past. At some point, the monsters got greedy and wanted to rule over the humans. This caused a great war to break out between the two races. We then find out that Unyo was one of the humans present during this era. She used to be a chieftain and was one of the humans who proposed to get help from the gods in their war against the monsters. So Okwang met up with the heads of humanity and they agreed to lend them their power. This became known as the birth of the first version of borrowed power, the one Unyo was originally granted. According to the king, this early version of borrowed power allowed humans to access the full capabilities of the gods. However, it came at a great cost. This early form of borrowed power either rapidly caused its user to age and die or, as in Unyo's case, causes them to get younger and younger until they cease to exist. Okwang goes on to tell Huey that the war between the humans and the monsters eventually ended. After that, Unyo rose to the position known as the Madonna, which is basically a human who's gotten pregnant with a god's child. That's because Unyo fell in love with a god along the way, a god named Lord Hwanyang. Hwanyang eventually wanted to destroy the early version of the borrowed power system for the sake of his and Unyo's unborn child. So Hwanyang decided to destroy the rough energy stones in that era and successfully abolish the first iteration of the borrowed power system. In the end, the other gods found out about this and punished Hwanyang, which was what we saw in Unyo's vision earlier. At the time, Okwang and the other gods knew that granting humans their full power would open the doors for their race to abuse it. As a way to prevent that from happening, Okwang decided to stay in the human realm to keep an eye on the human race. They also decided to split the three races during this time, distributing the gods, monsters, and humans to their respective realms. And lastly, Okwang reveals that he and the other gods initially created Knox as a way of policing humans in order to maintain balance in the universe. Somewhere else, Kim rises from the debris that Mandok left after he transformed. We discover that both Mujin and Hanryang are safe too. Kim asks Mujin what happened to Mandok's appearance earlier, to which he reveals that it's the bishop's true form, a manifestation of the old form of the borrowed power system. Mujin wonders where Mandok has gone off to, considering he's nowhere to be found in the passageway. All he knows is that there must have been something super urgent that forced Mandok to necessitate his transformation. Kim then asks if martial artists like him are exempt from the energy stones and anything having to do with borrowed power, but Hanryang tells him that it's more complicated than that. We then get the origin story of martial arts in the God of High School universe, as Hanryang tells the story of the first ever martial artist in the world. It turns out that during the war between humans and monsters, there was a prominent human clan who refused to accept the early version of borrowed power from the gods. Instead of accepting the gods' power, this clan decided to harness their own abilities, which then ultimately became martial arts. Hanryang then explains that even though Dusik doesn't rely on borrowed power, Knox and their energy stones will still absorb his life force. Simply put, the cult doesn't discriminate when it comes to stealing the souls not just of humans, but any living thing on Earth. Mujin then adds that every calamity, plague, and war that has happened on Earth up until now is orchestrated by Knox to gather energy for the gods, which they then use to extend their own lifespans. Mujin calls him a bunch of parasites living off humanity, as Kim asks him what his ultimate plan is, and in answer to that, Mujin reveals that he's going to destroy the gods and change the universe's social order. In a flashback, we see Judge Q visiting a fortune teller who tells him that he has reached his ceiling in terms of his skill level and professional career. The fortune teller attributes this to the fact that Q is physically average, and although he was born with the level of the power lender he's using, the fact that the Joker isn't necessarily a famous borrowed power makes the fortune teller think that Q has already reached as high as he could. In fact, the old mystic even tells Q that he's not to blame for all this. He was just born to a weak bloodline. Still, Q takes this all in stride and tells the fortune teller to keep an eye on him, because he'll become a member of the Six one of these days. But he immediately brands the old man as a quack when he's told that he's not going to have any luck with his finances. Q then remembers his time training with Mujin, where he truly started to doubt his own abilities and almost accepted the fact that he wasn't going to get any stronger. He then starts to reminisce about his relationship with his old rival, R. Q admits that R initially gave him the impression that he was nothing but a stan who used to hang around Mujin to make himself appear strong. But Q ultimately acknowledged that R was a strong and capable individual. In fact, Q remembers a time when he asked R what he would do if he somehow stopped working for Mujin. At the time, R told him that there was absolutely no way he would leave Mujin's side, especially considering that R owes his life to him. R adds that he would do everything in his power to make sure that he doesn't leave Mujin's side. Hearing this ultimately made Q believe in his own abilities, not to mention give us a deeper look at how he looks at R. In the present, we find out that Judge S is busy applying all his skills to heal Judge Q. He makes sure that his concentration isn't broken, given that the rebound from Q's activation of his direct contract with the Joker will eventually hit him. Nearby, we discover that Judge O has successfully captured and subdued Jang and scares the defeated priest by telling him that she's going to eat him as Dragon Tartar. The red dragon, still in its sexy semi-human form, approaches O, who then gives it another gold bar as a reward for its service. Meanwhile, Judge B resents the fact that they had to take out Sha Chen, since he truly found her to be his type. But suddenly, Judges feel something stab him in the back. We then find out that Romario did it, and the Knox Bishop is carrying the unconscious Sha Chen with him. Romario then starts having a mental breakdown as he screams for the king's forgiveness for what he's about to do. Of course, the other judges don't just sit idly by while this happens. They gang up on Romario to finally put an end to the bishop and eventually land a deadly strike on him. However, Romario starts to convulse and transform into his true form. The force of the transformation sends the judges flying several meters back, and when they turn towards Romario, they discover that he's turned into a gigantic monster. Romario then stabs C in the blink of an eye and knocks out B right after. Meanwhile, Q can feel moving against his will and recognizes that Romario is controlling his mind right now. A second later, Q is swept off his feet when Judge O orders her red dragon to retreat along with the captured Jang. But they haven't gotten far yet when another monster, which is then revealed to be Sha Chen's true form, blocks their path and attacks them. Judge O's chest is sliced, while the red dragon Chen Sik is forced to let go of her cargo in order to dodge Sha Chen's follow-up strikes. The red dragon is able to hold her own against Sha Chen for a few exchanges, but Romario comes behind her. In the end, all we see are Chang Sik's eyes as she braces for Romario's blow. Somewhere else inside the Knox core, we find Mansa curiously looking frail and wrinkled. A second later, he regains his youth as he tries to activate something inside the core. Romario senses this and telepathically asks Mansak what he's doing, to which he says that he's going to activate the Arc. Romario thinks that Mansak is going overboard acting without the king's permission, but he insists that this is the only way to keep their cult from getting destroyed. They then get into a psychic argument about how Mansak doesn't have the authorization to do this, but Mansak reveals that there is a way. We then find out that Mansak isn't alone inside the Arc, he's with R. Mansak then tells Romario that he'll face the consequences of his actions later. Right now, all they have to focus on is keeping the stability and peace of Knox. Romario can't believe it when he sees that R is able to activate the Arc after that, as Mansak declares that something very interesting is going to happen. We then see huge chunks of the city getting destroyed right after R activates the Arc. Chaos envelops the whole place because of this, as Mujin and his team rush out of the passageway to see what's going on. Outside, we find out that the Arc is actually Knox's very own floating fortress. In fact, we discovered that Knox's home base is part of the Arc, as you can see the King's Chamber of what used to be the God of High School World Tournament Stadium sitting on top of the imposing destroyer. Mansak then gives the command for the Arc to destroy, and it pretty much nukes the middle of Seoul and kills countless citizens with its energy beam. Inside the destroyer, Mansak goes nuts and declares that this is God's wrath as he sends gigantic swords to fall down from the sky and into the already ravaged city. Inside his private chamber, Okwang finds out that Mansak is taking control of the Arc and wonders if his star employee is either a traitor or just excessively loyal to Knox's doctrines. He then admits that stopping the Arc now would be difficult. For a moment, the king considers just killing everyone, and we mean every human on Earth, since they already know Knox's secret weapon. But he ultimately decides against it. Instead, he chooses to make the most out of this whole debacle by using the cult's energy stones to suck the life out of any remaining survivors down below. The old man then reveals that the Arc was purposely built as a way to cleanse the world whenever humans started to get unruly, although he admits that he tries his best to avoid using it as much as possible due to his fondness for humanity. One of the monkey warriors, a boy named Jesse, calls for the king to make the Arc stop, but Dante impales him with his bare hand. This causes Rayu and the rest of the monkey warriors to clash with Dante, as Jesse dies on the floor while calling for the Monkey King. Meanwhile, the king watches as more and more people die from the energy stones, remarking how beautiful it is to see the light of life disappear from its hosts. Huey interrupts the old man and asks him if they can proceed with the ritual to make him a full-fledged living entity instead of just a clone. But the king tells the boy to just wait a bit longer. Huey is not hearing any of this though, as he simply utters the word hurry. Okwang turns around and realizes that Huey wasn't talking to him at all. What's more is that he notices that Unyo's body is not where it was anymore. It's then revealed that Huey has been talking to Unyo this whole time as she performs a ritual in front of one of the rough energy stones. The king can't believe that Unyo is still alive. We find out that Huey actually pierced her in the stomach earlier. This move allowed them to make Unyo appear like she's dead and ultimately trick the king into thinking that Huey has betrayed his allies. In addition to that, Huey had secretly instructed Unyo earlier to go for the heart of Knox when he mentioned the word central chest after attacking her. The long and short of it is that Huey's still one of the good guys, and he just turned himself into a double spy. In the present, Unyo tells Huey to aim for the central marking area on the floor of the chamber. He does this and uses Yoi to pierce through the entire depth of the cult space and hit the Arc's core, which then deactivates the destroyer. Huey then sets his attention to Okwang and attempts to hit him with Yoi. However, the king manages to teleport away from the attack. The old man reappears and tries to blast Huey, but all this does is cause another huge explosion inside the Arc to further destroy it. Then, Okwang squares up to Huey and asks the boy if he's given up on his dream of having power and a full life, to which the Monkey King's clone says that he's going to stop the same power that killed Daewi. They clash and Huey whacks the old man in the face with Yoi to send him flying. At the same time, the last Dante clone is taken out when Unyo punches it in the face and into a wall. We then find out that Unyo has become a fully grown woman again and has transformed into her complete Eve version. Dante recovers and stands up after taking Unyo's punch, and Rayu can sense that the clone has absorbed hundreds of souls inside him. But it doesn't matter, because Unyo lunges at Dante again and barrages it with an unending series of strikes that the clone has no hope of defending against. By the time she's finished with her assault, Dante begs Unyo to stop. But the founder of the Six is having none of that weak stuff, so she puts Dante out of his misery and gives him an overhand left that nearly kills him. Huey sees this and is in awe of Unyo's strength. On the other hand, she knows that the only reason she was able to easily defeat Dante was because of the information that Huey gave her about the clone. Unyo is well aware that her opponent isn't completely out of it and that she has to finish Dante as quickly as possible. Huey then continues to ragdoll the king with Yoi. The old man is able to recover from one of his strikes to go for a counterattack, but Huey teleports beside him and uses original complete Mori Huey gift set to kick the lights out of the geezer. And just to make sure Okwang doesn't get up, Huey underscores his assault by dropping an expanded Yoi right on top of the cult leader. Suddenly, he and his allies notice that the ceiling of the king's chamber has started to open. A second later, one of Mandok's giant swords drops from the skies and right on top of Huey, but the Arc manages to tilt away and dodge it. Mandok resets his sword and tries to hit Huey with it again, but everyone is surprised to see that the huge blade has stopped in midair. When Huey turns, he discovers that the king has fully recovered again and is the one responsible for stopping Mandok's blade. The old man chastises Mandok for interfering with his bout with Huey. In addition to that, we find out that Okwang has managed to use his powers to lift Yoi off of him. Huey sees this and can't believe that the king didn't take any damage from the attacks he took earlier, as the old man asks him if he's ready to take responsibility for betraying him. Okwang's mere presence at this moment is enough to cause Huey and his allies to shiver. A second later, Okwang splits Mandok's sword when he summons his own signature weapon, Tathagata, the same katana that he used to defeat Uma and Ilpio. The old man then goes on another one of his monologues where he tells Huey that this was the same weapon he used to defeat the Monkey King thousands of years ago. He goes on to say that fear of this weapon is carved in the DNA of each and every citizen of the Sage Realm. Huey then gets a taste of the king's katana when the old man swings it and literally cleaves everything between Seoul and Jeju Island in a straight line. In fact, it slices everything it comes across, even clouds and bodies of water. In the middle of the battlefield, Huey notices that the Tathagata has broken his Yoi in half. The king starts to wail on the Monkey King's clone, forcing Huey to fully go on the defensive and weave through Tathagata's slashes. Okwang seems to be enjoying his fight with Huey so much that he fails to notice him when Unyo sneaks behind him. He's too late to turn around before the legendary warrior unleashes a devastating rib shot that directly hits Okwang. In a flashback from just a few moments ago, we see Anna floating high above the skies where she finds out that the Arc was buried right underneath the former God of High School World Tournament Stadium. Somewhere else on the Arc's surface, Kyoichi, Sugihara, and Midori are taken by surprise to see that the whole arena has changed. A few followers try to ambush them, but Kyoichi uses Orochimaru to take him out. In fact, we immediately discover that all the other teams from the World Tournament have banded together to defend against Knox's forces. Everyone from Team Argentina's Samuel to Team USA's Anna work together to easily defeat the followers attacking them. In the meantime, Mujin uses a technique called reverse gravity to direct debris and wreckage from the city's destroyed structures and aim it at Sha Chen and Romario. At the same time, Hanriang leaps into the air and uses Pumbaa verse 27, dicing, to send huge sharp shards of stone to rain down upon their opponents. Not too far away, a freshly recovered Judge Q looks on at Hanriang and Mujin's technique. He admits that he's not even one bit as strong as Mujin and the others, but he declares that he'll never stop working to get to that level. Q is suddenly interrupted when Kim comes running past him looking for his merchandise, Mujin. Meanwhile, Judge O gives the Red Dragon Chang Sig a hug after finding out that she survived Sha Chen's earlier attack. While all this was happening, Huey and the king were having their heated clash. Both Samuel and Anna couldn't believe it when they saw an invisible slash, the same one from when Okwang first used Tathagata, cleave through the entire city. In the present, Hanriang calls one of his assistants in the Homeless Association, who then reports that they have managed to rescue half of Seoul's population. Hanriang is pleased to hear this but can't stop himself from remembering the late Jason Jeon, one of his old fellow the 6 members. After the call, Hanriang faces the transformed Romario and Sha Chen, noting that he now has to protect the city the way Jeon did in the past. Romario's body suddenly gets severed in half when Mujin uses his powers on him. However, Romario instantly regenerates his missing half and counters by trying to pierce Mujin's side. Mujin leaps back and analyzes the battlefield. According to him, it would take at least 3 members of the 6 to take down 1 bishop. Thankfully, Mujin has something that might just tip the scales, someone he calls their strongest ally, because a few moments later, we find out that none other than Uma, the Oxen King, has been released from her cell and is now ready to bring the beatdown on the transformed bishops. The subjects of the Oxen Kingdom rejoice when they sense their king's presence accompanied by Beck, while Mujin thinks to himself that the only part of his plan that needs to click is up to Huey. Back at their location, the king is sent tumbling along the ground after eating Unyo's powerful body shot. However, she and Huey pause for a moment when they witness the old man use his powers to break his momentum and regain balance. From there, Unyo reveals that the king's power is actually based on the 4 main forces of nature: gravity, electromagnetic force, the strong force, and the weak force. Simply put, Okwang's power is control over the laws of physics, such as inertia, friction, attraction, and acceleration. Huey hears all this and is glad that there's one power that the king doesn't have: the ability to heal and regenerate. He then whispers something to Unyo before the two of them rush their opponent. Unyo goes in front of Huey and gives him a couple of haymakers, but the king stops her barrage by using gravity to force her to her knees. But it turns out that this is just a feint, as the opening allows Huey to launch Yoi towards the old man. However, the old man manages to slow down Yoi's trajectory by using a skill called drag on it. Rayu and his boys try to subdue Okwang while he's distracted, but the old man just uses frictional force to shake them off. But again, this is just another diversion. Seeing that the king is right where they want him, Unyo tells Huey to spring their plan, as he summons his signature thunderbolt to crash right on top of Okwang. Okwang then uses electromagnetic force to stop the thunderbolt, but it's revealed that this was just another double bluff to allow Huey to sneak right behind the old man. We then find out that Huey and Unyo agreed to study Okwang's moves when he whispered to her earlier. In the present, Huey prepares to hit the old man with one of his own trademark moves, the kick of a Muji. The attack doesn't land though, as Okwang beats Huey to the punch and uses an ability called inertia plus 0 frictional force, pure flesh, to slash Huey across the body. He then follows it up by using attraction to send Unyo's gut straight into his elbow before activating repulsion to slam her into a wall. The king follows suit and further crushes Unyo with inertia, as he prepares to stab her with Tathagata. However, the old man stops mid-attack when he notices that Huey is still standing. He turns around to see that the boy has successfully summoned his Monkey King armor, aka the Dragon's Robe, to mitigate the damage from his pure flesh technique. From a distance, Rayu realizes that they're overmatched against Okwang's true power. Huey then tells the old man that he would have easily defeated him if the original Jin Mori was here. In reply, Okwang agrees, considering he's not in his prime anymore. On the other hand, Huey is determined to show that he can do whatever the original Jin Mori could, so he uses his Jobon Chim 24 times ability to increase his combat prowess and proceeds to assault the old man. Huey's movements have become so fast that the king is forced to drop Tathagata when he defends against the boy's attack. He tries to nullify Huey's strikes with 0 friction, but the Monkey King's clone is just too fast. 0 friction is cancelled before Okwang could cast it, and he can't believe how Huey's absolutely cooking him right now. However, the old man has more tricks up his sleeve. He eventually finds an opening and uses attraction on Huey to halt the boy's offense and send him flying straight into his palm. The king follows it up with repulsion to try and send Huey flying away, but Huey manages to cancel his opponent's technique with a well-placed kick to the face. This in turn allows Unyo to get behind Okwang and hit the old man with an overhand left that rocks him. He counters by slamming his feet on the ground to interrupt Unyo's stance before using repulsion on her. Unyo is able to block the full force of repulsion, but the king already has his finger on her wrist when she recovers. From there, Okwang uses gravity to bring Unyo back to her knees, and this time the old man plans on straight up crushing her with his gravitational force. It would have worked too, if not for Mujin hurling an entire building on top of Okwang. This forces the old man to divert his attention and block the skyscraper with his bare hand. He then uses weak force to disintegrate the building and tells Mujin that he's going to deal with him soon. Meanwhile, Huey ups his output by using Jobon Chim 48 times. Unyo notices that the boy is putting his life on the line just as Okwang uses his electromagnetic force to hit Huey with his own thunderbolt. Seeing this, Unyo decides to unleash her borrowed power, Trinity, the gods of the wind, rain, and clouds. This allows Unyo to cancel out Okwang's thunderbolt and give Huey an opening to attack. So the boy shoots straight for Okwang and hits him with an overhand right before barraging him with a flurry of strikes. But the king is able to stop the assault by successfully casting his zero friction ability and tells Huey that there's nothing they can do against him. Hearing this just makes Huey all the more determined to prove that he can do whatever the original Jin Mori could do. But he stops in his tracks when he notices that the king has stabbed him in the chest. Okwang starts to gloat, but he's surprised when he notices that Huey has just hit him with Bong Chim Na style, Blood Vessel Bong Chim to numb and render his left arm useless. A split second later, Unyo swoops in and steals the cane of the sage. And with that, their true mission is accomplished. The king realizes that Huey had intended to sacrifice his life in the name of their mission this whole time, to which the boy says it's only natural. After all, his best friends Mira and Daewi had already given their lives for the cause. Huey then goes for Jobong Chim 72 times to further increase his output without any regard for the consequences. Witnessing this hypes up Okwang as he praises the boy. The two prepare to clash while, not too far away, Ilpio's fox beat starts to glow and vibrate. In the meantime, Unyo has set up a sigil around her in order to cast a spell that would finally bring back the original Mori to the human realm with the help of the cane of the sage. Clouds gather above them as she channels the spell, while Unyo is surprised that the cane of the sage doesn't use up as much energy as she thought it would. Not far away, the king and Huey lunge at each other yet again, with the Monkey King's clone summoning another one of his thunderbolts the moment they clash. Rayu and his fellow monkey warriors are puzzled though. They wonder why Huey would cast another thunderbolt knowing that the king could just cancel it. But the boy has other ideas. Instead of simply striking Okwang with the thunderbolt, Huey has used the electricity from it to charge up each and every one of his punches. The king notices this as he leaps back and dodges Huey's barrage. But the Monkey King's clone is able to corner him when he expands Yoi right behind the king. Seeing his opportunity, Huey jumps in the air and hits the king with Renewal Taekwondo, fist strike right in the face. The supercharged punch connects, but Huey suddenly loses his arm and reverts into his human form at the same time his blow lands. Unyo sees this and knows that the boy is in trouble. We find out that the king uses his gravitational power to return all of the damage from the fist strike right back at Huey. Okwang then turns toward Unyo and prepares to take care of her next. She thinks of a way to get out of the sticky situation and complete the spell she's channeling. Fortunately, Huey recovers just in time to distract the old man. The king senses his approach and tries to strike Huey, but he dodges it. The Monkey King's clone analyzes his opponent and thinks that Okwang's power is miles ahead of his. He remembers how the original Jin Mori would be able to beat the old man easily, but accepts the fact that he's not here. He brushes off the thought when he realizes it's pointless to keep comparing himself to the original Jin Mori. At that moment, he realizes that only one of his attacks has successfully breached the king's defenses up until now. So Huey pulls out the headband that Mira and Daewi gifted him as he gets ready for another climactic clash with the king. We find out that Huey only has 3 minutes before his Jobon Chim 72 times buff disappears. So he resolves to do everything he can to slow down his enemy before that happens. The king mocks Huey for trying to act tough, which leaves him open for the boy to teleport behind him. Okwang turns around in the nick of time to meet Huey head-on, but the Monkey King's clone gets the better of him when he teleports behind him again and uses Renewal Hui Chuk to kick him in the back of the head. Huey continues to put pressure on the old man with Renewal Fist Strike 1 and Fist Strike 2, followed by a cracking Renewal Front Kick that hits Okwang square in the face. However, the King of Knox is able to recover and go for a counterattack. Huey dodges it, but is surprised to discover that the old man has just used Bong Chim Na, Blood Vessel Bong Chim. He then attempts to barrage the king with more punches, but Okwang manages to palm Huey's whole head and hit him with an open palm variation of Renewal Fist Strike. Huey recoils and leaves himself open for the king to smash him with another copied technique, Renewal Hui Chuk, but the old man reveals it's just a feint and kicks dust in his eyes instead. Right after that, Okwang gives Huey a couple of taps and the boy immediately recognizes this as Blood Vessel Bong Chim. They reset their clash as Huey witnesses the king use the same technique to completely heal his left arm. Huey can't believe that the old man has successfully copied his techniques, as Okwang reveals that he did it with pure talent. That is to say, the old man just observed Huey's moves and ultimately deciphered how to perform his techniques himself. The king thanks Huey for teaching him these new techniques, while he feels pressure knowing that he has only 1 minute left before his Jobong Chim 72 times buff wears off. Okwang braces for another clash with his opponent, as Huey applies blood vessel neutralization on his own arm to heal the damage that the king did to it. He does everything he can to remain focused in spite of being aware of the gap between his and the king's power levels. A second later, the two combatants rush each other. Rayu and his monkey warrior friend are frustrated when they watch this. They want to help Huey but know that they would just get in the way if they do, so they decide to hang back until they find the right opportunity to provide backup. However, Huey has found himself at a huge disadvantage moments after his latest clash with the old man. Okwang is able to grab him by the left arm and use a powerful technique called weak nuclear force to straight up tear it off Huey. Still, the Monkey King's clone just eats this up and counters with a cracking headbutt that sends Okwang reeling. The old man recovers, but Huey doesn't give him time to make a move when the boy kicks him in the face. The whole deal becomes an all-out brawl at this point, as the two enemies trade blows at close quarters. Rayu and his friend remark that both Huey and the king are evenly matched right now and they might just win this war. Meanwhile, Unyo has started to open the Gate of Dimension to bring back the original Jin Mori to their world. However, she also knows that Huey is overmatched against the king. Leaving him to fend for his own would definitely mean his death, and that's something that Unyo is simply not having. In the middle of the battlefield, the king lands a punch and Huey proceeds to taunt the boy. This just makes the Monkey King's clone all the more determined. As he shoots for a takedown, proceeds to bash the old man's face with some classic ground and pound. Oakwing escapes the full mount by using his repulsion ability, which then sends Huey dashing back several feet. Huey can feel his entire body throbbing, but this just makes him feel more alive than before. So he clashes with his opponent again. Unfortunately, Huey's jawbone chim 72 times wears off just as he was about to punch the king in the face. He's forced to take a step back as Huey feels his entire body slowly disintegrating. Meanwhile, the king uses this opportunity to deliver Huey his killing blow. But Unyo calls for the god of the clouds to engulf the old man in a tornado and distract him. She then teleports Huey inside her sigil and proceeds to use her life force to heal the boy. Unyo notices that Oakwing has freed himself from the tornado before she could finish healing Huey. So Rayu and his friends spring into action to buy them more time. Unyo yells for them to fall back, but the monkey warriors refuse to do so. They valiantly face off against the king even though they're completely way over their heads. In fact, it only takes Oakwing a few seconds to pin down the two monkey warriors with gravity. He then prepares to take them both out, but we discover that Rayu has managed to acquire borrowed power when he gets back on his feet and channels the spirit of Mihu, the late false king of the Monkey Kingdom. Rayu then unleashes Woyorak's ultimate secret arts, Monkey Claw, but he's shocked to find out that the king has already copied it when the old man counters with his own Monkey Claw. Oakwing's Monkey Claw overpowers Rayu and the monkey warrior is sent flying. He then uses attraction to grab Rayu's friend and attempt to kill him with one blow using a technique called Nirvana. The monkey warrior braces for his inevitable end, but he's shocked to find that he's still alive moments later. In fact, he sees the king's arm lying on the floor. That's because Huey has fully recovered from his injuries and has just chopped off the old man's arm. Huey tells him that the pain the king is feeling right now was the same pain that Mira and Daewi felt, as Oakwing wonders what kind of technique Huey just used on him. In a flashback from just moments before Huey lopped off the king's arm, we find out that Unyo has consumed a lot of her energy trying to heal the boy. More concerning, though, is that Dante has re-emerged from the rubble nearby. Huey meditates while Unyo continues to help him recover from his injuries, resolving to combine both force and skill to find a way to put a stop to their enemy. Unyo notices that Huey himself is absorbing energy on his own, as the Monkey King's crown appears on his head for a second. From there, we see Huey gear up his Mori Huey original, the kick of Imuji, which he then uses to sever the king's arm. Just in time, too, because Dante has found his way to Unyo. He tries to backstab her, but Unyo reacts in time to counter with a punch to Dante's gut. In the middle of the battlefield, Huey puts pressure on the king and hits him with a punch before changing levels and going for a renewal lowest Huichuk. The old man barely dodges the sweeping kick, but he soon finds out that Huey used this as a feint to ultimately hit him with a renewal backspin kick that lands cleanly on his face. And from there, Huey starts cooking. He incapacitates the old man's arm again with Bong Chim Na style, blood vessel Bong Chim, cracks him with a renewal spin kick, and hits Oakwing with Daewi's own fist of the Black Turtle. The king blocks the fist of the Black Turtle, but he finds out that he should have dodged when the technique breaks his guard. Huey follows this up with Moonlight Sword style, bare hand slice before paralyzing the old man with Bong Chim Na style Blood Vessel 2. Huey doesn't stop his barrage, as he continues to drop devastating techniques he learned from other fighters, such as Macedonian Sarisa Phalanx, Renewal Orang, and Kusanagi style Darkness Slash. All the while, Huey remembers all of the friends and allies he's met up until this point, which helps him truly come to his own. At the same time, the king admits that he's lost their bound, as Huey prepares to hit him with Mori Huey Original Complete Gift Set. Meanwhile, we find out that Ilpio and Jin Mori are watching this battle unfold using the Fox Speed. Ilpio asks his brother what's happening in the human realm, and Mori can't help but tell him that their allies are in the worst possible situation right now. That's because we see Huey in the middle of the battlefield right after using the kick of Imuji. Curiously, his leg has been sliced up all of a sudden. When Huey turns, he sees that Dante stands between him and the king's lifeless body. However, Unyo tells him that the person in front of Huey isn't Dante anymore. It turns out that the king has transferred the spirit into the last Dante clone before Huey could kill him. Back at the megastructure in the ruins of the Sage Realm, Ilpio asks Mori what kind of person the king is. The Monkey King tells him that Oakwing is the kind of guy who seems both strong and weak. Mori's sure of one thing, though, that Oakwing never used his full power during the Great War. He even pretty much admits that the king's power intimidates him, but Mori's glad that Ilpio is on his side. That's because the nine-tailed fox is the only guy that can make the king tremble in fear. Hearing this, Ilpio tells Mori that he feels the same way about him, as the two make their way to the lower floors of the skyscraper after having just cleared its 5th level. We then turn back the clock to the moments leading up to the king's rebirth in Dante's body, as we find out that Huey actually followed up his kick of emoji technique with his patented Mori Huey original complete gift set. But just as he was about to flatline the old man, Dante swooped in to stand between them and allow Okwang to escape. We see that Dante has finally achieved his individuality, which made Okwang choose him as the next king. Huey planned on taking out the two with his technique, but it's just not enough for the old man to successfully transfer his spirit into Dante. In the present, the platform that was once the king's chamber crumbles from the arc. Not too far away, Uma shows why she's one of Mujin's strongest allies when she gives Sha Chen a proper beating before literally chomping off a huge chunk of her body. However, Uma doesn't notice that Sha Chen has laced her body with poison, which makes the Oxen King hurl after taking a bite off of her. But not to worry, because Beck is there to pick up the slack and follow up Uma's attack with his signature baseball bat. Sha Chen recognizes that Beck isn't holding an ordinary weapon when she spots that this baseball bat, also known as the Club of Justice, is actually the former Knox Bishop Byron. Uma then takes a bite of Byron and proceeds to lunge at Sha Chen again. Meanwhile, Hanriang forces the transformed Romario to go on the defensive by barraging him with a series of staff strikes. Hanriang then finishes his combo by summoning another one of his national treasures, the 108 Agonies, to bisect the bishop. It works, but Romario just regenerates again after taking the hit. At the same time, the combatants stop everything they're doing when they see that the king's chamber has landed right in front of them. Okwang, now in complete possession of Dante's body, approaches Uma and the others to tell them to stop all the hostilities. Mujin realizes that the king has successfully attained the version of immortality that he's been pursuing all this time, all thanks to taking over Dante's body. Romario and Sha Chen bend the knee in front of the king, as he tells Mujin and everyone else to surrender now and he'll forget everything that happened here today. According to Okwang, he's feeling good today, so he won't harm them if Knox's foes give up now. Mujin then asks the king if the creation of the Dante clones had anything to do with the late Jugal Tech. Ultimately, Mujin deciphers that Jugal Tech is a direct descendant of Okwang. The king then reveals that it's true. Jugal Tech was his descendant. In fact, we also find out at this point that Okwang created Byron and greed as part of his experiments to reach immortality. Mujin then chastises Okwang for using Tech in his experiments, but the king has no problem with it. According to him, Tech was closer to being a human than an actual god, so injecting him with greed way back then was no skin off his teeth. Okwang even goes on to say that Tech was a disappointment, since his human body was not able to handle his experiments. Mujin then pauses and spots the Vatican's Holy Grail, the national treasure that could seal a god, lying on the ground. However, Okwang also notices this and tells him not to do anything stupid if he doesn't want to get everyone killed, something that Kim agrees with, since Mujin is now his merchandise. Okwang then makes the announcement that he's going to severely punish each and every one of them if they don't surrender now. Hearing this, Uma tells the king to screw himself, because she and Beck are here to pay him back for the humiliation he caused during their previous fight. Hanriang joins the fray too, as Huey watches this unfold a short distance away. He blames himself for lacking the power to completely beat the king, but Mujin appears behind Huey to tell him that he, Daewi, and Mira did a great job fulfilling their mission. Mujin then tells Huey that he can rest now, because the adults will now be taking over this fight. Mujin, Kim, and Hanriang walk towards Okwang, but the king beats him to the punch and slices Kim and Mujin before they could even make a move. It becomes a no-holds-barred street fight again, as the two sides start to wail on each other. But the king was serious when he said that he's done with all this fighting. Instead of facing his opponents head-on, Okwang prepares his devastating technique called Strong Nuclear Force Big Bang to summon a moon-sized ball of, well, nuclear energy to drop on everyone. With it, Okwang plans on bringing the entirety of Asia back to the Stone Age. The colossal energy ball starts to wreak havoc all over the continent. In fact, the Big Bang is so devastating that its blast even reaches Australia. Meanwhile, the king goes on another one of his classic monologues as he reveals that he never thought he'd be destroying the world again like he did back during the biblical Great Flood. He then declares himself to be the beginning and the end as he flicks his finger to fully drop the Big Bang on everyone. Unknown to him, Lee Sujin is currently transformed into her Pandora form. As she stalks the king from Earth's atmosphere, she decides that it's now the right time to attack. And moments later, she drops down from space and pokes a hole through Okwang's energy ball to destroy it before it could even touch the ground. To simply put it, Sujin has just saved all of Asia and parts of Oceania from nuclear annihilation. Our heroes waste no time either, as Sujin and Beck immediately attack the king with the combined force of Northern-style ITF, cutting the front in Pacho version 2. Their joint attack envelops the king in a huge tornado, but he remains unscathed when he summons his own armor called the Robe of the Sage, the same suit that Huey saw when he first arrived inside Okwang's private chamber. In the meantime, Unyo finds out that the cane of the sages returned to her hands, prompting Okwang to wonder where it went. Sujin then tells Huey to summon the original Jin Mori while she and the others buy him some time. The battle starts again, as Okwang turns to see that he's about to be bombarded by rockets. He defends against them and sees that Hanriang was the one who sent these rockets towards him. He hides behind a rock, but Mujin spots the king and tries to attack him. However, Okwang parries him and throws back large shards of rock right at Mujin. Thankfully, Kim's there to make sure that his merchandise doesn't get the damage, as he punches away the rocks to rescue Mujin. Okwang and Mujin clash again, as they cancel each other out with their gravitational powers. But Mujin has no answer for when the king unleashes a combination of his inertia, frictional force, electric force, and weak force techniques. So Sujin steps in and uses her ultimate technique, the Hope, Sovereignty, in order to copy Okwang's ability and make them cancel each other out. Sujin strains as she calls for everyone else to pile on the king. Meanwhile, Onyo tells Huey to use Jobon Chim on her to remove the limits from her now weakened body and allow her to fully open the dimensional gate that would bring back Ilpio and Jin Mori. Huey is reluctant to do this, knowing that the rebound from Jobon Chim could end up killing Onyo, but she insists. After all, there's no other way for them to win this war. Inside the remnants of the Sage Realm, Mori and Ilpio notice a small dimensional portal opening a short distance away from where they're standing, so they hop on the Monkey King's cloud and hightail it towards the portal. Still, Onyo doesn't have enough juice to create a portal large enough to allow Ilpio and Mori to pass through. Nearby, Sujin and her allies put pressure on Okwang to mixed results. That's because the king is able to fend them off eventually. Even worse, he's learned how to use and put his own spin on their techniques too, as he sends them flying with Northern-style ITF hyperspeed triple strikes. Sujin is able to recover from the hit, but Okwang catches her with another technique he learned, the kick of a Muji, and successfully lands it. At the same time, Onyo strains to keep the portal open. Knowing that there's no other way to bring back Ilpio and Mori, she throws caution to the wind and orders Huey to hit her with another Jebong Chim buff. Nearby, Bakanuma see that Onyo is having problems opening the dimensional gate. He proposes that they open it instead, but Uma tells him that it would be impossible since only a human can use the cane of the sage. In the meantime, Onyo screams for Huey to use Jebong Chim on her again, but it's too late. Her body gives out and she reverts into her infant form before Huey could do it. The Gate of Dimension closes, and Ilpio and Mori remain trapped inside the Sage Realm's remnants. Huey notices that Onyo is now suffering from Jebong Chim's rebound. At the same time, Okwang brutally carves his path through Sujin, Mujin, Kim, and Han Riang with good old-fashioned martial arts. Still, they get back on their feet whenever the king knocks them down. Annoyed, Okwang asks them why they continue to resist even though it's futile, to which they reply that they're humanity's team. There's no way they're losing this battle. Onyo tries to reach for the cane of the sage one last time, but her current lack of strength won't let her. In turn, Romario steals back the artifact and even mocks Onyo while he's at it. Huey hears this and prepares to teach the evil bishop a lesson in manners. Not too far away, Okwang stops from attacking his opponents when he sees Huey run through Romario. A near unconscious Onyo then discovers that there's a silver lining here even though she failed to bring back Ilpio and Mori. It turns out that opening the portal earlier bridged the distance between Jin Mori and Huey. As per the rules of Mori's cloning ability, Huey becomes stronger the closer he is to the original Monkey King. Ultimately, he was able to absorb a great amount of energy from the original Jin Mori during the time Onyo had the dimensional gate open. Huey zooms past Sha Chen on his way to the king, as his allies augment his strength for the showdown. Han Riang lends him the 108 Agnis to help him defeat the king, while Sujin adds her Pandora armor to Huey's own. Bakanuma transfers some of their power to Huey as well, and it almost seems like they're going to win this one with their combined might. In turn, Okwang draws Tathagata to meet Huey head-on. They get into an intense sword fight, which ends with Huey's clone Yoi shattering to bits when the king lands a strike on him. Huey falls to his knees after that, while Okwang praises him for managing to chip Tathagata's blade. Mujin and the rest of his allies witness this, and he thinks that they've completely lost the battle now that Huey has been seemingly defeated. However, they don't notice that Onyo has used the last ounce of her strength to open a small portal to the Sage Realm again, one just large enough for the original Jin Mori to send his Yoi to Huey. The original Yoi lands right in front of Huey and he grabs it. This allows him to access the full power of the original Monkey King, so he gets ready to throw down with Okwang again. Meanwhile, Okwang has lost his patience, as he asks Huey when he plans to stop fighting. Huey tells him that he can do this all day until the king is defeated, as the two combatants clash one more time. The impact from their weapons causes a huge explosion on the Arc's surface. At the same time, Sujin is forced to withdraw her the Hope Sovereignty technique when she reaches her limit. As a result, the resistance group are no longer able to suppress the king's immense powers. Okwang notices this and immediately tries to use his abilities on Huey. He activates his natural force attraction ability but is surprised to find out that nothing happens. We then find out that the reason behind this is because Mujin has successfully picked up and activated the Holy Grail, forcing the king to rely on his martial arts if he wants to defeat his opponents. The explosion from Huey and the king's clash causes the Arc to fall apart, as its tip breaks off and falls on top of the city. The Arc then starts crashing, but Mujin prevents this by casting his reverse gravity ability to suspend the Arc midair. At the same time, Okwang sees Tathagata's blade break into 3 pieces after the recent clash. Han Riang wonders if they've won now that Okwang doesn't have a weapon and he's sealed from using his powers. However, Sujin tells him that they've yet to achieve victory. That's because Huey has reached his limit as well. He realizes this himself, so Huey tells himself he has to end this battle as fast as he can. But Okwang manages to quickly recover when he uses Jobong Chim on himself before proceeding to pummel Huey with a series of techniques he learned from his enemies, such as Northern-style ITF and Kyokushin karate. He thinks he's won when Huey manages to find an opening in his defense and unleash Jin Mori's classic technique, Renewal Hamigili on the king. Okwang's head bounces like a pinball after the trio of head kicks hit him. Huey follows it up with renewal 3-stage Huichuk and punctuates his assault with a move called Jin Huichuk. However, the king is able to withstand the otherwise deadly combo with the help of the Robe of the Sage. This allows Okwang to resist physical attacks and attempt to cancel Huey's attack with his own version of the Jin Huichuk. But we find out that Huey was just performing a feint as he redirects his kick toward Okwang's face. Okwang realizes that there's no way he can defend against this and accepts his defeat. He braces for impact but is pleasantly surprised to discover that Huey's attack did not land. He then sees Huey's entire leg slowly disintegrating when the king opens his eyes. It's then revealed that Huey has finally, truly reached his limit this time. As Sujin puts it, handling the original Yui was just too much for the Monkey King's clone. Okwang tries to take this opportunity to take out Huey but realizes that his powers have been sealed. Everyone watches as Huey slowly dissipates into nothing, while the king berates himself for feeling genuine fear after facing the Monkey King's clone. A few moments later, Okwang safely lands the arc on top of the city. He then gets hold of the Cane of the Sage and prepares to use it to destroy Huey completely, however ultimately decides against it. Surprisingly, Okwang pulls back and humbles himself as he admits defeat. He then tells everyone that he's going to spare the life of anyone who surrenders to him as a reward for the great battle that Huey showed him. However, a shadowy figure smiles from its hiding spot somewhere and asks the question, "Says who?" Meanwhile, Huey's body continues to disintegrate as he questions the power gap between himself and the original Jin Mori. At the same time, Okwang thinks that the war is over, but he stops in his tracks when he sees Huey get back on his feet. The Monkey King's clone loses another leg when he gets up. Still, he forces his way to continue the fight. He tries to grab Yui, but his hands disappear right after that. His other hand disintegrates, so Huey decides to wield the magical staff with his mouth. Okwang witnesses Huey's unbreakable resolve and can only ask the boy why he keeps doing this, wondering if it's revenge for what happened to Daewi and Mira or a sense of loyalty to the original Jin Mori. In reply, Huey simply tells Okwang that it's what he wants to do. According to the boy, this isn't about revenge, victory, or defeat anymore. All Huey wants right now is to knock Okwang down. Hearing this, the king asks Huey if he's willing to risk the destruction of humankind just to fight him. Mujin then tells Okwang to not count them out yet, because there's no way they're going to give up either. The entire resistance group gathers around Huey and helps him on his feet. At the same time, Romario and Sha Chen stand beside Okwang to back him up. A stare down ensues between the two teams and the tension is only broken when Okwang lets out a huge laugh. He then plants his butt on the ground and admits that he's all gassed out, telling Huey and the others that he truly admits he lost their fight. The king then orders his bishops that they're going to return to the heavenly realm now. Sha Chen protests, but Romario convinces her to obey. Before leaving, Okwang tells his opponents that he's going to reward them by not interfering with the human realm for the next 100 years. He admits that humans have become very powerful, although he doesn't forget to taunt Mujin just before walking away. Meanwhile, Unyo has a vision of her lover, Lord Huanyang, where we find out that he made her promise to raise their child and turn it into a force that would create a better world. In the aftermath of the battle against Knox, we see that Hanriang has Unyo in his arms as she gradually reverts further into an infant. Unyo apologizes to everyone for using them as a way to get her revenge on the gods for what they did to Huanyang. She then turns to Huey and thanks him for everything he's done for them, even telling him that he showed power that surpassed even the original Mori Jin during his fight with Okwang. Mujin then tells Huey to not blame himself for their loss, since it's his and their other human allies' fault for being too weak to defeat their enemies. In the end, Mujin tells Huey that he was the best among them, while Unyo whispers something to the boy. We then see Unyo's soul reuniting with Huanyang in the great beyond, as she completely fades out of existence in the human world. Huey watches Unyo disappear as he utters one last prayer of peace for his fallen comrade. Not too far away, Okwang asks someone how long they plan on just standing there. Sha Chen thinks he's talking to her, but we immediately find out that the king is speaking to someone else entirely. He waves his hand in the empty space in front of him, which causes the fabric of reality to tear and reveal that Bishop R was stalking the scene this whole time. This scene reminds me of when Shinji did the exact same thing and revealed Aizen stalking him from the shadows in Bleach. Back to the manhwa, Okwang asks him how he was able to activate his arc, but their conversation is interrupted when Mansak steps in. In fact, we find out that it was Mansak who asked the question, "Says who?" earlier, as he seemingly mocks Okwang for just giving up on their fight against Mujin and the resistance group. All of a sudden, Okwang starts to feel a strange kind of energy emanating from R, as the bishop walks past him, and when the king turns around, he sees R bowing in front of Mujin. That's all for now, guys. This has been the second part of God of High School's Ragnarok Mega Arc, and we hope you loved watching it. The last part for the Ragnarok Arc is on its way. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the like and subscribe button. I appreciate all your support. See you in the next video.